Welcome back to the PFF NFL show here on PFF's YouTube channel. Myself, Trevor, Sikkema, and Dalton Wasserman here with you guys to recap every game that we have seen, minus Monday Night Football, of course, in Week 10 of the NFL. It's a very exciting week. A lot of things to unpack. We're going to get into the top 5 PFF grades for every single team on every single game. Dalton, how are we doing today, my friend?
Chilling. We had a good weekend. We were in Indiana for Indiana-Michigan on Saturday. That was a fun one. Their first 10-win season ever. Top 10 team in the country, and a big one against Ohio State coming in a couple weeks. And then NFL yesterday was kind of weird. We had like this high and low day of like the 1 o'clock slate. A lot of good games in the 1 o'clock slate. Pretty quiet 4 o'clock, and then it ended last night with a bang, didn't it?
So a lot of football for you this weekend, which is why about 30 seconds before we started recording the show, you went, oh, man. Could really go for a nooner right now. Could really just go for a cold one here, which is actually not a bad strategy for maybe one of these midweek NFL shows. We might be able to get away with it and spice it up a little bit. But
maybe we might. That'll be a higher up decision. There's water in here, by the way. In case it's water. Everybody relax. I didn't just go ahead and do it. Anytime I'm on here, it's water. Just so we're clear.
Stick around, folks. It's going to be quite the show here. With depending on what is in Dalton's cup, which he says is water. Allegedly. We'll see.
We'll find out by like the 5th or 6th game.
I was going to say, last 30 minutes of the show, I think we'll be able to figure it out. Hey, we're going to break down a lot of these games here. If you guys don't have a PFF subscription, you can go get one, a PFF Plus subscription over at PFF.com or subscribe.pff.com, and you can follow along with us. You can even get the PFF grades slightly before we go live every single Monday at 1 p.m. to do this thing, and you can follow along really any other day as well if you want to check out these great premium stats that we have over at PFF.com. Dalton, I think that we got to start off with the Sunday Night Football game because, holy cow, what a thriller it was. There were a lot. I feel like there were a lot of really good games that I'm really excited to break down here on today's show, but let's start off with Lions-Texans. Maybe not the full Titanic matchup that we thought that it was going to be just because there was injuries on both sides of the football. These teams aren't as healthy as they could be or certainly were at the beginning of the year. So injuries just sort of told the story a little bit, but in the end, the Detroit Lions got the thrilling last-second walk-off field goal victory 26-23 in Houston. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded players for the Dallas Cowboys in this game before we break it down. Center Frank Ragnow was the top man on the list with a 93.0 PFF grade. Cornerback Carlton Davis showing that investment trading for him was worth it with a 91.3 overall grade. Guard Kevin Zeitler, the veteran, really stepping up, a 91.2 grade. Brian Branch continues to play unbelievable this season with an 83.8. And then offensive tackle Penei Sewell, who the boss around these parts, Chris Collinsworth, on the broadcast was just singing Sewell's praises, and he should be one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL, and that was on display last night. Jared Goff, you must be this tall to ride the Sunday Night Football Jared Goff roller coaster, because holy cow, was that an up and down game from Jared Goff. But it ends up spitting out the 55.4 overall grade. On the other side of things, Houston, their top guy was Derek Stingley Jr., their cornerback, 86.0 grade. Tight end Dalton Schultz with an 86.0 as well. Rookie safety Kalen Bullock with an 81.9. Wide receiver John Mechie getting his first touchdown. You love to see it with him battling back, getting out of the field. Just a really feel-good story there last night. 81.0 overall grade, and then edge rusher Danielle Hunter with an 80.9 overall grade. CJ Stroud in this one also struggled, particularly in the second half, which I have a feeling we're going to talk about quite a bit. Hit a 56.3 overall grade. Dalton, I will start with you. And as we do for every single game, what is your stat that told the story of this one?
So the anatomy of any comeback actually starts on defense, right? You have to get stops first before you can start scoring enough points to come back. And the Lions, I should say, came out immediately in the second half and started doing it and did it all the way through. Okay, the Texans in the second half had 82 total yards in the second half of this game. 4 punts, 2 interceptions from Stroud, a missed field goal late in the fourth quarter that would have given them the lead late in the last 2 minutes, and then the Lions go down and kick the game winner with Jake Bates. This just completely fell apart on the Texans in the second half. From the very first play, Stroud throws one of the interceptions to Carlton Davis, like you mentioned, and they did not score a single point in the second half. I just think this is what you get. The Lions came out and they swiped the momentum from the Texans. They had all the momentum, right? It was 23-7, 20-7, and it just completely went away. All the issues we've seen with the Texans the last few weeks, the lack of receivers with Nico Collins still out and Stephon Diggs out for the year.
Yep.
The offensive line issues inside. Look, it was a bad matchup for them against the Lions in this game with Aleem McNeil and DJ Reader on the inside. They didn't run the ball as well with Joe Mixon in this game as they have in past weeks. Just all of the Texans' issues They just waited a half to come out in this game. And we're seeing consistently now that they can't overcome these things. We will see if Nico Collins is back next week and that really fixes the offense. But I think right now, to me, even when they're succeeding, it's very horizontal. I think they're losing. There was a couple of nice throws Stroud made down the field, but they're losing the vertical element of this offense, and now it's starting to cave in on them a little bit. They need Collins back healthy in the worst way, and they still need, to me, this pass protection to get a little bit better. But you can see even someone as good as C.J. Stroud, without all those supporting pieces, it's a struggle right now, and a 39.9 passing grade in the second half of this game is not going to get it done.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's not necessarily my stat that told the story, but it was my most disappointing with the Texans' second half offense. Texans in the second half over the last, I think, 4 weeks, 3 against the Packers, 6 against the Colts, 6 against the Jets, and 0 against the Lions. 15 total points in the second half over the last month. Will Kunkel had that on Twitter. It's just got to be so much better than that, right? I mean, when we talk about points off of turnovers alone, there were so many turnovers by the Detroit Lions in this game. Jared Goff throws 5 interceptions. In the first half, they had 10 points off turnovers, 0 points off turnovers in the second half. And it's not like those turnovers went away. They were still there. The Texans just cannot get things going in the second half. And so that is very, very worrisome, especially because it wasn't just this game. It wasn't just Thursday Night Football. It has been a trend now. The Texans, certainly with some star wide receivers out, and I think that definitely goes into that lack of consistency on the offensive side of the ball. Really, unless Joe Mixon absolutely takes over for them, as we have seen him do over the last month, it's tough to really find that continuity with the rest of the offense to be able to keep moving the ball, especially in the second half, because when you get into halftime, best defense coordinators in the NFL, like, they'll be able to adjust, man, and you got to stay one step ahead of them. And it feels like Bobby Slowick this season is not able to stay one step ahead of those defensive coordinators. And it's not something that he's incapable of doing. We saw a great season from them in this offense last year. But to me, they were definitely a most disappointing here, because now this is a trend with the Houston Texans and something that we have to monitor of. Okay, they start out of the gate really hot. They were up 23-7 in this game. And they ended up losing the football game because they scored 0 points in the second half. That just cannot happen, even with some of the injuries that they're dealing with and all that. You're not going to get to where you want to go as a franchise. My stat that told the story, the Detroit Lions turnovers, and sometimes we do these stats that told the story, and obviously we will list a stat for a team that won the game, right? Like, oh, okay, this is a big reason why they won. This was a stat that told the story on both sides of things, because I'm going to say that Detroit's turnovers, meaning the 2 interceptions that Carlton Davis got in particular, are a big reason why they were able to make this comeback in this game. I mean, him jumping that quick little out route to start the second half, I mean, just absolutely beautiful. I watched Carlton Davis for a long time, the entirety of his Buccaneers career, being a Buccaneers fan myself, and I don't think I've ever seen him play that confident. I mean, he was so confident last night, and he had a great run when they were going to the Super Bowl and everything, and Carlton Davis was good in Tampa Bay, but holy cow, last night's Carlton Davis was a different story. That's the player that you trade for that can make it all worth it. The first interception was beautiful there, and then him coming across the field on that deep interception that was going to Tank Dell, that's another incredible play by him, and you can tell by how confidently he went up to high point the football in the air, how confident he was making that play. So that is a story, Detroit's turnovers on the defensive side of the ball, of why they were able to come back. And I think on the other side of things, the turnovers, the 5 turnovers that Jared Goff had in this game, the 5 interceptions, that is also a story, because, Dalton, this game shouldn't have been that close, especially for how bad the Texans struggled in the second half. Detroit should have handled this game, and they didn't because of the turnovers. To me, the stat that told the story of the game was, okay, reason why the Lions were able to come back is their turnovers that they forced on defense. But the reason why it was close and they needed to come back in the first place was of all those turnovers they had on offense.
Yeah, and these things happen. And look, I don't think there'd be anyone that debates that the Lions are, 1, more talented than the Texans, and 2, it's kind of a bad matchup for the Texans as well, as good as the Lions are on the interior on both sides of the ball. It's just, these things can happen. You go on the road, you're playing a good team, a team that's really trying to get their momentum back of their season through all their injuries, and these things can happen. But I think there's a lot to be said for the great teams. We see it from all the best teams, is is winning when you're not throwing your best punch, right? And okay, they're not gonna beat everyone 49-7 every single week, right? And on the other side, Jared Goff is not gonna throw 5 interceptions every week. Everyone's gonna freak out about Jared Goff this week. And look, he just played 5 or 6 great games in a row. I don't think there's really a lot to worry about. A couple of the interceptions even were kind of fluky. So I think, look, they just got to get back into rhythm. They went on the road. They beat another division-leading team. I think if you're Goff, you look at what you did wrong. You look at a couple of things kind of unlucky. Yes, there were 4 turnover-worthy plays among them, but I think at a certain point you just sit there and you go, well, they won another ball game, and style points, at least in the regular season, for sure, they don't matter, right? And you just keep winning one at a time. And the Lions are 8-1. They beat another really good team.
Lukey asked in the chat what Aleem McNeil's grade was because he was not on that top 5 for the Detroit Lions. He has 72.6 overall grade in this one and a 72.7 run defense grade in this game. My most impressive is Carlton Davis. It's hard for me to go outside of that. Brian Ferentz had a great day as well, as we saw in the top 5, just like Carlton Davis did. But again, I go back to those 2 interceptions were a very big deal, but I think it's just the confidence in which he was playing that was the most impressive to me. It is really difficult to play outside corner in the NFL. It is by nature an up and down position. You mentioned sometimes you're not going to have your best day and you've got to be able to figure it out, but on those days that you are your best, are you an impactful player? And certainly Carlton Davis was on Sunday Night Football. So to me, he had to be the most impressive. There are a lot of guys to choose from, but he had the most impressive performance of anybody out there. What about you?
I'll take Frank Ragnow, the constant on the inside at center. I mean, you talk about there's a very short list of guys who could be considered the best center in football, and Ragnow is on that list at the very least and could be number 1. I mean, you've got a 93 overall grade in this game, 91.5 run blocking grade, 0 pressures on 34 snaps, pass blocking snaps in this game. I mean, just a dominant effort from arguably the best center in football, and I think we still probably consider this offensive line the best offensive line in football, and even through Goff's interceptions and maybe some struggles early on defense in the first half, this offensive line is a constant, and whether it be through the run or the pass, it can get them back in this game. When you have that up front, and really I would say maybe only 1 or 2 other teams in the league have it right now, when you have that type of offensive line 1 through 5 up front, you're never out of a game. You're never too far ahead in a game. They can keep pouring it on. It is what makes this team great, is this offensive line before anything else. And Frank Ragnow is right in the middle of it.
I'm glad I looked this up because I thought that would have been the best coverage grade of Carlton Davis's career, single game coverage grade, 90.7. He actually tied a game where he played the New Orleans Saints in 2019, so it was tied. That 90.7 coverage grade was tied for a single game high for Carlton Davis. Most disappointing. My most disappointing was the Texans in the second half, but what's yours before we move on?
The other side of Ragnow and that O-line, without Will Anderson, this Texans defensive line really had no answers. Danielle Hunter had 3 pressures, but as a unit, only 10 and a 44.7 run defense grade. In the trenches, the Texans still lack depth. If they don't have Hunter and Anderson on the field and dominating, it can get to be a problem against teams like this.
All right, let's move on to which game we got next year. Let's talk about the early game. Let's talk about the game in Germany. It was Giants-Panthers. It was an exciting one. Was it an explosive football game? Was it the best display of the sport that we have? No, but at least we gave the local German people and the Europeans over there an exciting close game here as the Panthers come away victorious 20-17. 2-game win streak for the Carolina Panthers, I must say. Let's look at the Carolina Panthers' top 5 graded players here in this game. Number 1, their free agent addition, Robert Hunt, who is continuing to show a strong ROI for them, bringing him in with an 84.9 overall grade in this one. Linebacker Josie Jewell, an 84.1. That incredible interception definitely goes into that grade there. Offensive tackle Taylor Moton with a 78.8. Guard Damian Lewis, another free agent addition for them, a 77.3. And then edge rusher DJ Wanham, they've definitely needed to increase their production on the edge here. He rounds out the top 5 with a 74.7 grade. Quarterback Bryce Young in this one, a 71.4. On the Giants side of things, rookie cornerback Andrew Phillips continues to be a bright star for them with an 88.2 overall grade. Edge rusher Brian Burns, an 85.1. Evan Neal, yes, Evan Neal, with an 80.6 overall grade in this game. Cornerback Cordell Flott with a 77.8, and then offensive guard Greg Van Roten with a 76.7. Daniel Jones in this one, a 65.7 overall grade. Dalton, where do you want to start here?
This was more about a team. You mentioned it wasn't the prettiest game in the world, but the team that made less mistakes won the ball game, right? The Giants had 3 turnovers plus a missed field goal in the first half. The Panthers, I believe, didn't have any turnovers in this game, and that's really just what it comes down to. The Giants made mistakes, couldn't finish drives. Daniel Jones wasn't great, certainly didn't play as well as he did last week, but both interceptions deep in Panthers territory. The Josie Jewell one in the second half that was just incredible inside the Panthers' 10-yard line.
Weight room, baby. Weight room.
And then, of course, you feel for a rookie mistake here, but Tyrone Tracy with the fumble in overtime that sealed the game for the Panthers.
Brutal, man.
Yeah.
I felt so bad for him.
Yeah, I mean, and he's had such a good year so far.
Know.
I mean, he was one of your stock exchange guys, wasn't he? There,
he was.
With that? But
he was. We loved him.
This was just a game where I thought the Panthers they won because they played the cleaner game, right? And I think they were better up front in this game on both sides, especially in the run game on offense. And then the Giants just making that many mistakes. Sometimes you get bad teams, they find ways to lose. It's not necessarily that they play bad all the way through, but in the biggest moments, they made the biggest mistakes, and that was the difference in the game.
Yeah, I look at the stat that told the story for me, and it was a close game, right? I said that it wasn't the most explosive or best display of the game of football between these two teams, but it was close, and there were opportunities for the Giants to win this game, even down at the end, right before the Tyrone Tracy fumble. Daniel Jones as a passer left a lot to be desired in this game, as it feels like he has throughout his entire NFL career. He's always been somebody it's very alluring what he can bring on the ground. I mean, there are times when he looked like a battering ram out there, and he's never afraid to put his body on the line, and you can understand why coaches like him, and he's got that mobility to him. But 22 for 37 passing, 109 passing yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in this game. But then when you kind of filter things for, okay, passes 15 or more yards down the field, below 50.0 PFF passing grade, third down as well. I feel like third down, just winning third downs with his arm. He just does not do it with regularity. And again, a PFF passing grade in the 50s for Daniel Jones when you really need it, right, on those third down situations. And I think that's sort of where we are at with Daniel Jones. And to me, I don't mean to beat a dead horse here or just keep bringing this up, but this is the issue with the Giants, is right now they don't have a quarterback that when they need him to, it's not even like, when you get in trouble. Every quarterback in the NFL needs to win a third down with their arm at some point every single week. And Daniel Jones has been capable of it, but it is not consistent enough. And so to me, the stat that told the story is just, once again, Jones not being a consistent threat enough with his arm as a passer in this one, and it just held the Giants back a little bit too much to where, of course, a late game fumble ends up losing it for them against the Panthers. But who's your most impressive in this game?
I'll take Robert Hunt inside for the Panthers. Look, the Panthers were dominant on the ground in this game, and he was the biggest reason for it. 88.7 run blocking grade, also gave up no pressures and 28 pass blocking snaps. And look, right now, the Panthers, their offensive line has been good just about all season, whether it was Bryce Young or Andy Dalton or whoever playing quarterback. They've only had a couple of bad games, and this was either the worst or second worst interior unit in football last year. And what you mentioned, Damian Lewis, too, what these two guys have done inside for them. They've gone from the worst interior unit in football to they both rank in the top 17 among guards right now. This is a good unit. They can pass protect. They're getting it together in the run game. They certainly earned Chuba Hubbard that extension. Not that Hubbard's not playing well and you're getting into that.
Holy
but
cow.
Man, oh man, with this blocking in front of him, especially on the inside between the tackles, I think it's been a big help. You have to fix your offensive line no matter who your quarterback is. And I think the Panthers went out and did that this year.
Look, Chuba Hubbard signs the contract extension. I think everybody looks at this as very interesting, right? You traded up for running back in last year's draft in Jonathan Brooks, who I like a lot, who I thought was going to be the future RB1 of this team. Hubbard has played great this season, but now you invest draft capital in a running back that was already hurt coming off an ACL tear at Texas, and you use extra draft capital to go up and get him in the second round. So already that's a little bit of a rich of value. And then you give Chuba Hubbard the contract. It's like, guys, we've got to be able to utilize our resources a little bit better than this. But you're going to pay the man. You want to see production. This guy's been so productive for the Carolina Panthers. And let me tell you, they are not winning the last 2 games without Chuba Hubbard. They're just not. 28 carries in this past game, 153 rushing yards of rushing touchdowns. He also had 4 catches on 6 targets for 16 yards. He is such a major piece of their offense. And I think everybody collectively sort of held their breath when he went down. His knee kind of bent awkwardly. And it's just like, please, come on. We don't need this. I mean, not only did he just sign the new contract, but he is such a cool part of this team. He's a reason why Carolina is able to play well and why they're at least entertaining to watch now every single week, even though they're not the best team in the NFL by any means. He makes that offense go. And he was once again the most impressive for me in this one because without him, I don't really know where they're at. I like what Jalen Coker is as a wide receiver. I like how Bryce Young has improved. I like how they're using Jatavian Sanders. Like, all that stuff is great. Those things don't even really happen, in my opinion, unless you have Chuba Hubbard playing the way that he has throughout the first 10 weeks of the season, I will say, not even just this game. So he had an incredible game, and I wanted to make sure I gave him his flowers there. Who was most disappointing for you in this one?
For me, it's right on the other side of that. The Giants just not as physical as they usually are, especially in run defense. Brian Burns was their only player with at least a 70 run defense grade and a team run D grade of 41.3. The only game they were worse was week 1 against Minnesota. So the Giants just in general, especially on defense, not as physical as they've been in past weeks. Usually their big Dexter Lawrence and their big defensive line is the reason that they stay in these games on defense. And this game, they just didn't show up. I think the Panthers offensive line dominating the Giants up front on defense, that was the biggest story outside of all the turnovers.
Gordon McGinnis in the chat saying Panthers are unbeaten in Germany since PFF great Eric Eager joined the team. Really makes you think. It really does make you think.
See that?
Really does make you think.
Some of us know what we're doing around
Mine
here.
most disappointing in this one is Deontay Banks because it's just been a season that has been very disappointing for Deontay Banks, and it kind of piggybacks off of what you were saying a little bit with the Giants' run defense. I mean, Deontay Banks in this one, 43.7 run defense grade. I mean, it just has not been a good year for Banks, no matter how you slice it. I think that in man coverage, he's been beaten quite a bit, and that was sort of his bread and butter. That was why you drafted him, and he's really struggling in that area, and then he's struggling in run defense. And there's also been some effort concerns with him throughout the first 10 weeks of the season. So all of a sudden, we went into this year thinking, all right, even with Andrew Phillips and Deontay Banks, like, okay, maybe they would still need an extra corner the next year. Now corner is starting to creep higher and higher on their team needs when we start to talk about the 2025 NFL draft. Could maybe even be a first-round need for them. I know quarterback is as well. So I'm not saying that you're going to take a corner over a quarterback, but just saying, if quarterbacks are off the board, the draft doesn't fall the way you want to, corner is now becoming a major need for them in 2025. Steelers at Commanders. Steelers win this game 28-27. Very close game here. Back and forth game between two really good coaches, in my opinion, in Mike Tomlin and Dan Quinn. It was fun watching this one play out. Let's look at the Pittsburgh Steelers' top 5 graded players in this game because they won. Wide receiver George Pickens had a very... I don't even know what to call that game. It was eventful. Eventful is probably the best way that I could describe George Pickens probably every single week. He had the top grade at an 80.5. Edge rusher Alex Highsmith was 77.8. Edge rusher TJ Watt a 76.2. And then offensive tackle Broderick Jones 74.0. We then get tight end Darnell Washington at number 5 to round things out with a 73.8. Quarterback Russell Wilson in this one a 79.9, justifying that decision by Mike Tomlin to make the quarterback switch there when they still had a winning record. On the other side of things, for Washington, tier defensive lineman Sheldon Day with an 89.9. I just love how Dan Quinn is elevating the guys in that front seven. It really started out as a struggle for them this season, but now you get just all due respect, you're sometimes getting random names up there where it's like, wow, okay, they had a great performance too. I think that Dan Quinn's putting these guys in a really great spot. So Sheldon Day at the top here with an 89.9. Wide receiver Terry McLaurin with an 82.5. Edge rusher Dorrance Armstrong with a 77.2. Safety Quan Martin with a 72.9. Wide receiver Noah Brown a 71.6. Jaden Daniels, your boy, in this one, a 65.8 overall grade. What do we got here, Dalton? What's the stat that told the story?
So I've got actually a handful of them because what this was about Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin planning the right way for this offense. Now, not every team has the personnel to do what the Steelers can do and kind of move things around and what they do up front. But here's what you have, Trevor, and what they did with this offense. One, Steelers had the 6th lowest pass blitz rate in the NFL coming into this week at 26.5%. They blitz Daniels over 58% of the time on his pass plays, all right? Normally, the Steelers, okay, they don't blitz a whole lot.
They don't have to.
They don't have to,
right?
Because they can just send 4. They can just send 4 all of the time, right? And okay, so coming into this game, they ran a 5-man front about 27, 28% of the time, okay? In this game, right around half the time, all right? And change up the coverages. Normally, cover 1. All right, the Steelers, they run a little bit of man coverage, but not over the top like some teams do. Normally, 23% of the time. In this game, 56% of the time. And press coverage on 86% of Washington's snaps. So here's how I'm going to break this down for you. It actually starts in the run game, okay? This 5-man front on early downs caused a lot of problems for this run game because the idea was it was just about not letting Daniels keep it and get outside and make the explosive plays, right? Fine. We will let, if Austin Eckler and Jeremy McNichols beat us between the tackles, cool. So they lined up in a 5-man front. And what you saw was TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith lining up way wider than usual, like serious wide 9 stand-up stuff, okay? Keep contained. If you don't let this team run outside, and usually teams, even if they sit outside on the edge, they'll get beat in that gap just inside the edge player because most teams are in a 4-man front, right? They haven't thought of, let's get in a 5 against Washington and take away that C gap too, right? So they're playing extra wide, they're keeping contained, and the other thing they were doing with these edge guys was instead of sitting and making Daniels just wait out his read and, because you know how it is with the read option. If he sits, hand it off. If he crashes, keep it, right?
Right.
They were crashing, but they were crashing in a direct line at Daniels, not down the line of scrimmage, right, if that makes sense. So TJ Watt, instead of maybe if he wanted to go and get Austin Eckler, he wasn't coming straight down the line. He was running right at Daniels' outside shoulder, so there was no chance at all that Daniels could keep it. So that's the first thing in the run game is, okay, we're just not going to let him. We're not going to let him do it. And then the Steelers in the passing game, they blitzed a lot, so Daniels had to get rid of the ball quick so he couldn't scramble at all. Mm-hmm. And the press coverage on the outside, they liked their matchups, okay? They felt like, okay, Terry McLaurin's the only guy that can beat us man-to-man, right?
And he had a good game.
And he had a good game.
Steelers still won.
But the rest of them, not so much. This is the part where earlier in the year I was curious if Washington would actually trade for another receiver or they were in on the Brandon Ayuk talks because you have one primetime guy outside, but this was a game where the Steelers decided, press up, cover one, we're blitzing, we're going to make him get rid of the ball, and we're going to make the wide receivers win quickly. Everything got sped up on Jaden Daniels. Just a little bit, just enough. It's not like he didn't keep his cool. They still scored 27 points. It's not like they're not a top 5 offense still, but I love the Steelers breaking all of their own tendencies, really, in this game plan and just finding a way specifically to scratch out enough against this team. Even though they still gave up 27 and Washington still got an elite offense, they're still going to compete in the NFC East. Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin, I thought, put together a master game plan front and back.
I love it. I love you pointing out all that stuff, and it makes a ton of sense when you break it down like that, especially because my stat that told the story was the Commanders' run game without Brian Robinson Jr. He's out in this game, and so you mentioned it's Austin Eckler, it's Jeremy McNichols, but it's also supposed to be Jaden Daniels, right? You're supposed to be okay in this game against the Steelers specifically. And you mentioned they were okay with letting the running backs have a little bit of an advantage between the trenches.
If Austin Eckler beats you between the tackles,
right,
you didn't play well enough.
Yes, right. So in this game, 1.7 yards after contact, lowest of the season for Washington. 2.7 yards per carry overall, lowest of the season for Washington. 59 rushing yards, which was the second lowest single game output for them this year. And then Jaden Daniels, here we go. 5 rushing yards in this game, 49.1 rushing grade, both of those lowest on the season. So I did not do that intentionally. I didn't think that my stat was going to mirror perfectly with yours, but that is exactly what happened. Is they were very comfortable saying, okay, we have a quarterback who can do a lot of different things. And when you have a quarterback who can do a lot of different things, when you're a defensive coordinator, you often have to pick and choose. You can't say, okay, well, we're going to try to defend everything that he does here. It just doesn't work like that. It's like a goalkeeper in a penalty kick, right? You kind of just have to guess. You have to commit one way or the other, and you have to hope that sort of plays in your game plan, and maybe they're not ready for it. Maybe you catch them by surprise, whatever. So when we play Jaden Daniels, something that we talked about here on the show, what makes him so dangerous? It is the fact that he is willing to be a passer on the run more so than he ever had been in college, which he was a Heisman Trophy winner when he was a between the tackles kind of pocket passer. And yet now you're throwing in this year him being very comfortable keeping his eyes downfield as a passer when he escapes, especially when you get RPO type of stuff or play action type of stuff, which already forces the defense to be a little bit hesitant. So the Steelers very clearly were like, all right, nope, that's not how you're going to beat us. If you can beat us in the middle, if you can beat us more traditionally, fine, go beat us that way. You're not going to beat us in the most dynamic way. And obviously this is a 1-point game, so it was really close anyways. But to me, their inability to run the football, especially without Brian Robinson Jr., was a big deal in this game.
Yeah.
My most impressive, again, Steelers defensive line, it's kind of echoing a little bit of what you said. Newcomer Preston Smith played well in this game, had 2 tackles for loss, had a sack. Cam Hayward, Defensive Player of the Year candidate, 2 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. TJ Watt, a little bit more quiet of a night on the common stat sheet, but two quarterback hits in this one. And you mentioned sort of the role that he played trying to contain Jaden Daniels. So that's a very impressive one for me. And then the most disappointing, just real quick, I'll say it. Unfortunately, it's kind of like the Tyrone Tracy thing. Unfortunately, we got to point out another rookie, a guy that we love here on the show, Johnny Newton. Jumps on the offsides when it was like, all right, you just hear the broadcast. They just say it so many times. They're just like, all right, don't jump. All right, they're going to see if they get the jump. I don't even know if they're going to call this play. And then Johnny Newton jumps at the end, gives them the first down, and the Steelers were able to run out the clock there. But those are my most impressive and most disappointing. What about you?
Real quick, and you mentioned the Steelers defensive line as well. So it might seem like, TJ Watt, he only graded a 76. Usually he's in the 90s. He's the best player on the field and all of that. But I think along with all of the talent and the execution on that Steelers defensive line is a game plan like that, especially one that keeps Watt and Highsmith out of a lot of plays, the way they were playing it, especially in the run game. Those guys inside have played together for so long, and I know Keanu Benton's a young one, but there's so many veteran guys that what gets forgotten in there is not just the talent, but the trust they have in each other to go, okay, TJ has to back off this week a little bit. He can't just come in with the right hook and punching out footballs and doing all the crazy stuff on the ball. If he crashes down and they don't play disciplined football, well, they're going to lose this game, and Jaden's going to take off on him. So I think not only the talent, but the execution and the trust level on that defensive line is so massive when you have, because not every team can't do what the Steelers did. There's teams that wouldn't be capable of switching the game plan like that and being able to be humble enough to go, okay, the rest of my guys are going to make these plays inside. So I thought just, again, a masterful game plan. And you mentioned their defensive line, they could beat anybody with it. Most impressive, I'll go on the offensive side. George Pickens, like you mentioned, it was eventful. The touchdown catch, reaching up and behind him to catch that was incredible. He had an in route where he broke, 2 or 3 tackles on that play for a big play. Deep catch down the sideline that set up a touchdown in the fourth quarter.
What was the jumping stiff arm one? Was that the one where he was going to the sideline where he caught it and it was like he literally like jumped into the stiff arm as if it was like a Street Fighter move?
I mean, he's just there. But we've said it, I think, in a couple of weeks now. There's no one who's benefited more from the switch to Russell Wilson. George Pickens is a vertical receiver, and what they were adding with Wilson.
That's why Mike Williams is a great addition for them, right? It's the same type of receiver.
Because the Jets were throwing it 5 yards every play, and Wilson wants to throw the ball down. I think his average depth of target was like 12-something in this game, which is deep. If you're throwing it consistently that deep downfield, we're talking about, okay, we're hitting home runs in this offense. And that's the one thing they weren't doing with Fields. Again, Justin Fields wasn't playing bad, but he wasn't throwing the ball accurately deep down the field like this. And George Pickens has been the biggest beneficiary. And on the other side, with the most disappointing, you saw the exact reason, and he didn't play yesterday because he's still recovering, I believe, from a hamstring, why Washington traded for Marshawn Lattimore. If they have Marshawn Lattimore, they might win that game yesterday because you have all 3 of their primary corners, Mike Sainristil, Benjamin St-Juste, Noah Igbenogany, all graded under 60 in coverage. They're the lowest graded cornerback room in the league right now. Marshawn Lattimore is a perfect fit for their team, and they're going to get a lot better with him in there on the outside. And you saw it in this game exactly how they can lose games to receivers on the outside. And if he's not back this week, I believe they're playing Thursday. They're playing Thursday against Philly. If he's not back for this game against A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, that's going to be issue number 1 for Washington on Thursday.
Best part about football season is checking out the post-game stats, right? Which wide receiver scored more than 2 touchdowns, which quarterbacks threw for less than 350 yards, whatever the stats are. If you think you know what's going to happen before kickoff, you got to play Pick 6 from DraftKings, an official daily fantasy partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app. All you do is select between 2 to 6 players and choose whether they will have more or less of a single stat. It is that simple. For all the first-time Pick 6 players, if you put $5 on your first Pick 6 set, you get 50 in Pick 6 credits for free. You just mentioned a big matchup. Whether or not Marshawn Lattimore might be in the game, you might be able to find some juicy lines for the Philadelphia Eagles wide receivers, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Maybe you think, oh, no. They're going way over the Commanders' corners. They cannot handle these guys. There you go. There's your 2 that you can pick right there. You might even pick both. You might even be able to pick both Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown if you think both of them are going to go off on Thursday Night Football. But that's just one example. You can find a million other combinations throughout the NFL every single week. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and just use the promo code PFF. That's promo code PFF for new customers to play $5 on your first Pick 6 set, and you get 50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. If you've got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problems with gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. In Connecticut, must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Pick 6 is not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits expire within 6 months. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. Vikings Jags slugfest.
That's the word for it.
Absolute pitcher's duel here. I don't even know if that's the case, because I think that would mean that there'd be great defensive performance. I just think it was sluggish offense.
I think they put the slug in slugfest in this one. Yeah.
The Vikings win this game 12-7. The Jags, no Trevor Lawrence in this game. Mac Jones started in this game. Continue their skid as this season goes on. Some heated post-game comments from Machine and the coaching staff. I think everybody's just very frustrated in Jacksonville right now, understandably so. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded players in this game, starting with the Minnesota Vikings. Cornerback Byron Murphy with an 89.1 overall grade. He was the top man for Minnesota in this one. Tight end TJ Hawkinson back in the lineup, 85.6 overall grade. Offensive tackle Brian O'Neill with a 75.0. Tight end Josh Oliver still in the lineup and playing very well despite TJ Hawkinson being back. He had a 74.7 overall grade. And then linebacker Ivan Pace with a 72.6 grade. Sam Darnold in this one, quite a few turnovers, but hey, still got the dub. 61.7 overall grade on Jacksonville side of things. Cornerback Ronald Darby with a 90.7 in elite grade there. Safety Darnell Savage with an 87.1. Cornerback Monteric Brown with an 81.4. Offensive tackle Walker Little with a 73.3. And then tight end Evan Ingram, a 67.0. Mac Jones in this game as the starter. Hometown starter. It was a homecoming for him. Grew up in Jacksonville, played high school football in Jacksonville. Finally got the start for the Jags here. 56.4 overall grade. Seth told the story. What do we got, Dalton?
Just turnovers. This game was as ugly as you mentioned at the top, and there's probably a majority of people who want to forget this game ever happened. So started with Sam Darnold in the first half, 3 interceptions inside the Jacksonville 30. Minnesota was driving. Honestly, they could have ran away with this game early, probably won it something like 28-7, but Darnold making a lot of mistakes. Really just not a good day accuracy-wise for him. He missed a lot of even open throws or throws in the end zone. I mean, it was a tough day for Darnold, and they're trying to get by with Cam Robinson as their new left tackle instead of Christian Darrisaw. There's just a lot on offense. It's not quite clicking the way we saw earlier in the year with Minnesota. And then in the fourth quarter, in a close game, actually a game that Jacksonville was ahead for most of it, Mac Jones with 2 interceptions and a lost fumble. He fumbled a snap in the fourth quarter. So just a game where both teams were ugly. It's not even like the Giants-Panthers game where one team made mistakes and the other didn't. Both teams made mistakes in this game. Minnesota moved the ball a little bit better to get those field goals on the board, and they forced their turnovers late in the game when it mattered. But it was an ugly one, and one that when we look back on it, we'll just be like, wow, that was you mentioned a slugfest, but I think that might even be complimenting it.
I mean, the game wasn't that different because, like you said, it was so sloppy between both teams. But even if you just look at the time of possession, which I feel like is the stat that probably told the story for you, because you didn't have to know anything else about this game. And if you saw that the Vikings had a time of possession of 42 minutes and 19 seconds compared to the Jags just 17 minutes and 41 seconds. The Jags only had the football for 17 minutes and 41 seconds in this game. Everybody in the world would tell you, looking at the time of possession battle, they'd be like, yeah, Minnesota won. And obviously, if you dig into it a little bit more, it's not like they won it very clearly.
They wouldn't have guessed 12-7.
It's not like all of these drives were, like this methodical, everything's working. It's just who had the 21 play drive? Was it Army who had the 21 play drive?
Yeah, like 14 minutes or something.
Yes,
Army
it was
against
it was almost
North
a full
Texas.
quarter of football. Yeah. I think it was 21 plays, like 95 yards.
Yeah.
It was something that was crazy. So it wasn't quite that from the Minnesota Vikings, but when you have the football that long, it's so hard to lose.
Something good is going to happen eventually.
It's so hard to lose.
Yeah.
And really the only thing that kept the Jags in this game is that Sam Darnold continues to throw turnovers, which kind of brings me into sort of my most disappointing here, which I'm a little bit more worried about because I don't think there's a lot of big takeaways from this game because the season for Jacksonville is over. Right? I mean, I think we're going through wholesale changes with the coaching staff this upcoming offseason. It's just a matter of Trevor Lawrence, who missed this game with a shoulder injury, do you even want to play Trevor Lawrence really throughout the rest of the season? And if he's healthy, he's going to play. It's not like they're just going to like shut him down to shut him down. But there's not a huge takeaway from this game other than the fact that the Vikings were at least able to get a victory against a team that they should have beaten. Most disappointing for me moving forward, though, is Sam Darnold in these red zone turnovers, because he had one inside the red zone turnover. He had an interception and a turnover-worthy play, but then I saw you point out this in your notes as well. He also had an interception from the 30. So he was throwing into the end zone, and he was throwing into the red zone, and that was also another turnover-worthy play and an interception. So technically it's not a quote-unquote red zone turnover-worthy play for him. But when you look at the season, if you include that throw into the red zone that he had this week, his 4 interceptions and 4 turnover-worthy plays into the red zone are the most in the NFL. Like that's the area where, buddy, you can't be doing this. Of course we want to get 7 more than we want to get 3. But at the end of the day, this offense is good enough, it is stable enough to where if you aren't committing these turnovers at the number 1 rate in the league in the red zone, Vikings offense is going to be all right. You're going to be able to figure out, you're going to be there when it's near the end of the game. You're either going to be ahead of the scoreboard or you're going to be close enough. That's the big issue for me, though, is Sam Darnold turning the ball over in the red zone, because it has become a big problem this season that I didn't really think was talked about enough. I had sort of heard of it over the last couple of weeks, how much he's been struggling, but when I heard that, it's kind of in the back of my mind as I'm watching this Jacksonville game, and now he does it twice, and I go, okay, there we go. Like, this is now a problem for the Vikings if he cannot take care of the football better in this area of the field.
Yeah, and to your point, he's got 12 turnover-worthy plays since week 4. That is tied with Drake May for the most in the NFL. So if you're Sam Darnold, it's been the thing your whole career. You have to protect the football. And this is a team that has a boatload of talent on offense, right? And they've got a defense that's playing well under Brian Flores. The one thing that'll kill this team come playoff time or down the stretch here is giving the football away, right? So it's just a matter of sometimes, look, throw it away. And honestly, I think there are times when, especially in this game, where just not as accurate. He's just missing throws. I don't know if it's his footwork, if his timing's off, because it just doesn't look quite as crisp as it did the first few weeks of the season. But those are the things that can lose you ball games, especially they're going to be playing a lot of big divisional games down the stretch here, and turnovers will lose it for you.
Most impressive?
I'll take Byron Murphy.
You should.
Had the fourth quarter.
Was it the breakdancing moves after the interception that got you?
Oh, the whole thing.
Okay.
Look, during the play, after the play, everything. You could argue he's the best player on the field in this game. 90.1 coverage grade, only allowed 1 catch on, I believe it was 3rd and 18 for 11 yards, the interception in the fourth quarter. This is why they brought this guy in, to be their number 1 corner. And I know the Vikings, they aren't stacked with talent in the secondary. They kind of play greater than the sum of their parts with Brian Flores schemes and all that. But it helps when Byron Murphy goes out and plays a game like this. And, of course, we talk about the slugfest, but really what slugfests mean, even though they're ugly, some people even boring games, was, 2 defenses played pretty well. I want to credit the Jags secondary, too. They were really good in this game, Ronald Darby and those guys. So it's not just, these 2 offenses went out and they were so horrible that it was the worst game ever. I mean, it's still good defense involved in that, but I'll take Byron Murphy.
I'm going to go with TJ Hockenson in this one. It wasn't his first game back. It was his second game back, but I believe it was his first game as a starter, and it was certainly his first game back to being TJ Hockenson that we remember. 9 targets, 8 catches, 72 yards. All of those were team highs. The 9 targets were tied with Justin Jefferson, but he was either tied or at the very top of the list for the Minnesota Vikings. So it was sort of like a, hey, welcome back to the offense kind of a thing. And, you want to get him a little bit acclimated coming off of that injury last week, but they really hit the ground running with him as a major focal point of their offense. And I think it really changes things when he is out there. I think the receivers outside of Justin Jefferson are playing well as well. We saw a big catch from Jordan Addison. Like, those guys have elevated, I think, the floor of this offense, and TJ Hockenson now in the mix, I think, just is really going to mean a lot for them moving forward. Did you do most disappointing for this game?
No, for me, it's just Doug Peterson, and I've said this in weeks prior, so I'm beating a dead horse, but I just don't know what the plan is.
Did you see the post-game press conference quote?
I did not.
So he's asked about the Mac Jones interception to end the game, and he's like, "What was Mac supposed to be looking for there?" Because it looked like a bad interception, and the question was basically, what was Mac supposed to be looking for there? And Doug Peterson's just like, yeah, I'm not going to explain it to you guys because you wouldn't get it, but it's just we'll go look at the tape and we'll be better. And it's like, that's dead man walking.
Yeah,
answers.
I don't really get why answer like that, but either way, I mean, it's not just that play the entire game. I mean, 16 design runs for 49 yards, 28 dropbacks for Mac Jones, and, you're trying to help him out, but only 3 of them were play action, right? And I would think maybe, and I know Tank Bigsby, I think, rolled his ankle or he got hurt somehow early in the game and then came back and he wasn't quite right, but only 3 play action dropbacks. Your best player, Brian Thomas, only gets 3 targets the entire game. Look, I've said it in past weeks, and it doesn't really change. It's just, in past weeks, they had Trevor Lawrence who could make big throws and kind of work through the lack of a game plan. Now you see what it looks like with a guy like Mac Jones in there.
49ers, Buccaneers, the next game we're touching on here. Another walk-off win that we get to talk about here. The 49ers take down Tampa Bay in their own house in Tampa. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded San Francisco 49ers in this one. Rookie guard Dominic Pooney with an 83.4 overall grade. Tight end George Kittle continuing to have a fantastic season, an 82.9. Cornerback Renardo Green, another rookie in the top 3. We'd love to see it, 82.6. Offensive tackle Trent Williams, an 80.6. And wide receiver Juwan Jennings, a 77.8. Brock Purdy in this one, a 64.5. On the other side of things for Tampa Bay, they're also highlighted by a rookie in the number 1 spot. It's running back Bucky Irving with a 74.7. Safety Jordan Whitehead with a 72.8. Linebacker KJ Britt with a 71.2. Defensive tackle Kalijah Cansey with a 70.4. And then cornerback / safety defensive back. They use them all over the place. Christian Izzian with a 70.3. Baker Mayfield in this one, a 59.5 overall grade, which does include the stiff arm 4th down conversion of Nick Bosa, which is just going to go down as one ridiculous. Of the most insane plays that you're going to see this season. What was the stat that told the story here for you?
Okay, so first, the Niners probably, considering the way it went, they should have won by about 20. That's just being real. The Bucks stay in it, and the Niners missing kicks and all of that.
3 missed field goals.
This is a game. I don't think the score indicates really how wide this game could have been, and the fact that the Bucks tied it. Props to him and Mayfield making the plays, tying the game up there. But it was ugly, and I think with the Bucks, what you're seeing is they don't have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, so there's just no explosiveness whatsoever. Their longest play of the day was 15 yards. Baker Mayfield had a 4.4 yard average depth of target. Their wide receivers had 4 catches for 28 yards. Your 3 leading receivers are Rachaad White, Cade Otton, and Bucky Irving. And Irving, look, great player. He could even, you could even call him the best rookie running back so far this year. I think he's up there. But I think 215 total yards for this team and only 4 explosive plays all day. None of them over 15 yards, and the other 3 were run plays from Irving. There's just nothing there right now. Without Evans and without Godwin, they can't create explosive plays, and I think everybody on opposing defenses knows it without those 2 guys. They need Mike Evans back in the worst way. I believe they're going to have one more game and then a bye week, and then they'll get him back. Is that right?
I think so. I can't remember looking it up off the top of my head.
It was something along those lines that it's either one more week or whenever it is after their bye week, they're getting Evans back, and that's the only thing that could save them right now because they are not explosive on offense at all.
No, they have the bye week next week. So
okay, the Niner game was the 3rd game.
This is supposed to be the week that they were getting to without Mike Evans, and they're hoping to get him back in week 12. At least that was sort of the last report that I had heard a week or so ago. So we'll see if they end up getting him back. Honestly, Dalton, though, I hear what you're saying. They definitely have a lack of explosiveness on offense. It's true. I'm not taking anything away from that. Defense is bad. I mean, this defense is just really bad. It feels like when Todd Bowles' defenses go on these skids, it just feels just helplessly bad. And that's really what it was. That's really what it is for the Buccaneers. 428.7 yards per game allowed over the last 3 weeks. Going into this week, 32nd in the NFL. Dead last in the NFL over the last 3 weeks. The most yards given up of any team on average. And they give up 413 to the Niners. So it's not like that average is coming down that much at all. So they're probably still leading the NFL in yards per game allowed. It's just not good enough right now. I mean, whether it's the coverage or the linebackers or the defensive line, it's not cohesive at all whatsoever. They've had some injuries. Jamel Dean's been out of the lineup. Certainly not having Sebastian Dennis has been hurting them really throughout the first half of the season of when he got out. And they just don't have a lot of juice at edge rusher. And I think for this team, it's really disappointing because if Chris Godwin and Mike Evans don't get hurt, I think that maybe they're buyers at the deadline. Jason Light typically doesn't like to do that. He doesn't like to trade his draft picks. But the Bucs were at a point entering what was that week 5 against the Atlanta Falcons where they were really in the driver's seat. And then they had the shocking loss and the giving up over 500 passing yards to Kirk Cousins on Thursday Night Football, and that's kind of a punch in the mouth, but that ended up being a precursor to what we have seen really since then, and that is the defense playing terribly, and now the offense is not able to punch a little bit higher because of the lack of explosiveness that you mentioned there. So to me, the stat that tells the story continues to be that this defense is not good enough.
Yeah.
It is not good enough for this team to win football games. And even if Mike Evans comes back, that's the part that has to change. And I think that that's the part where Tampa Bay will continue to have a disappointing season. It looks so different than what it did 5 weeks ago. Because 5 weeks ago, even going into that Thursday Night Football game, it looked like Tampa, sorry about hitting the mic there, it looked like Tampa was sort of like in the driver's seat for the division. Now, they have one more win than the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints. One more win. We're sitting here talking about those teams as bottom of the barrel. And they got one more win than those teams. So until the defense gets better, nothing's going to change. Most impressive or most disappointing?
I'll start with disappointing. You mentioned the Bucs in coverage, and I like that you used that first Falcons game as the cutoff point because since that game, they went into that game with the second best coverage grade in the league through 4 weeks. Since that game, they have the worst coverage grade and worst EPA per pass allowed. And, you even see in a game like this, Zion McCollum, I believe, had a coverage grade somewhere in the high 20s. I mean, even the guy who had been their best coverage player all year is now struggling, and it's just a team-wide thing. So their coverage has been struggling, and a guy they struggled to cover in this game was Jawan Jennings. And look, I know it's a big blow to lose Brandon Ayuk. Your football team does not get better when you lose Brandon Ayuk, but to have a guy like Jawan Jennings step up, 7 catches, 93 yards, 5 of them went for first downs. The big run after catch down near the end, towards the end of the game there that set up the game-winning field goal from Jake Moody. I think this is somebody who has made a lot of clutch plays for the Niners this season. I think he's going to continue to do so. Also, shout out Ricky Pearsall for his touchdown. Was it in the first half of this game? I think these are two guys who are going to make up for the loss of Ayuk just a bit. Look, Ayuk's one of the best receivers in football. It does suck that they lost him for them, but these two guys are guys that can step up. I think Jennings has been doing it almost week in and week out. He's a really clutch player for them. I think he's going to continue to produce.
Jennings is awesome. Fourth quarter, Purdy was also awesome in this game. 2 big-time throws, only 1 turnover-worthy play, a 91.7 adjusted completion percentage, and an 83.7 passing grade. He had some money throws on some of those drives in the fourth quarter, which got them into field goal range and obviously kept them ahead on the scoreboard. And so Purdy did his part. He really did. He's very comfortable spreading the wealth, whether it's to the running backs out of the backfield, the tight ends, the wide receivers, no matter who it is. You start with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, and now you're comfortable throwing it to Ricky Pearsall and Jawan Jennings, and I know Samuel's still in the lineup, but it just impressed me how comfortable he was. I mean, what was it? That touchdown to Kittle.
Oh.
I don't think there's another quarterback in the NFL that makes that throw. And I mean that both in a good and bad way. One, because he's just unbelievable at timing and touch. But he also kind of has to be because I think he's probably got the weakest arm of any starting quarterback at the NFL level. So that ball leaves his hands, and I'm like, there's got to be 5 guys that are waiting to pick this pass off. And instead, it's a perfect, only George Kittle could get it, sideline of the end zone type of throw. And like that's the stuff that is so... It's so hard to wrap your mind around Purdy being one of the top NFL quarterbacks without that type of arm strength and velocity. But you're right, you're pointing to the head, and that's all what Brock Purdy is, and he showcased that in the fourth quarter. He was very clutch for this team, obviously got them in position to make a game-winning field goal. And speaking of field goals, that is my most disappointing, is Jake Moody. You mentioned that this game probably shouldn't have even been that close, and it shouldn't have been. He missed from 50, he missed from 49, and he missed from 44. I know he made the game-winning field goal, so I want to give him props for that, but you got to have a field goal kicker who's not bringing you down that much with 3 misses in a single game.
Yeah, and I think I counted it up. I think except for a kneel down, I think at the end of the first half, I believe every single Niners drive got into Bucs territory. So I mean, they were moving the ball like crazy.
Well, that's a Todd Bowles stat that I would believe.
You mentioned 413 yards allowed, and I mean, yeah, if you come away with zeros, though, I mean, we see it all the time. That's how you keep teams in games. So it was a problem last year that they were worried about. Moody was a rookie, maybe another year of experience, but this is a game that he hit the game winner, and we'll give him credit for that. But 3 for 6 is that's tough to swallow.
Falcons at Saints. Falcons had no business losing this game. Saints felt like had no business winning this game, and you know what? Saints won the game, 20-17. New Orleans gets the victory here. They get the fired head coach bump, which I think is a very, very real thing in this league. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded players for the New Orleans Saints because they won the game. Look at who's at the top. Trevor Penning, as if things weren't batshit enough with this game even ending the way that it is.
Well,
Trevor
second guy there, too.
Grading at a 92.7, and then wide receiver Marquez Valdez-Scantling a 92.1. It's just hilarious to me. Shout out to those guys. Guard Cesar Ruiz with a 77.1 overall grade. Wide receiver Kevin Austin Jr. getting a rep here at number 4, 73.1, and then safety Tyrann Mathieu a 71.5. Derek Carr in this game a 77.3. On Atlanta's side of things, Chris Lindstrom. We sure that number's right? Is that number right? 96.7. I know it's right because it's a classic Chris Lindstrom game. He'll give you one of these every now and then because he's unbelievable at run blocking. Defense tackle Eddie Goldman with an 89.7. Running back Bijan Robinson a 78.1. Wide receiver Drake London a 78.1 as well. And center Ryan Nuzzo with a 73.9. Kirk Cousins in this game a 62.3. Dalton, I'll just start because you actually have an analytical point here with your stat that matters, or stat that tells the story. My stat that tells the story is this is voodoo magic.
It's real.
It's New Orleans,
down
man.
there. It's real.
There are so many weird games that happen with the New Orleans Saints where they win at all or win in a way that you never would have expected. Sometimes it's special team stuff. Sometimes they're just absolutely unbelievable on the ground. Sometimes it's the defense stepping up and it's multiple turnovers. Sometimes it's guys that maybe weren't even in the NFL a couple of weeks prior and now they're absolutely standing out. Guys that we thought were draft busts like Trevor Penning grading out as elite players. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 3 catches, 3 targets, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. The Saints had no business winning this game, man. No business. This team looked absolutely dead in the water, and they come out and, as I was looking at the games and, okay, like, who do I pick in this game? Who do I bet in this game? A couple of my friends were like, oh, yeah, Falcons -4. Like, that's easy money. And I'm like, I'd never touch this game. I'd never touch this game.
Saints-Falcons game, I'd never, no.
Saints-Falcons,
ever.
But in New Orleans, given all the craziness that has happened with this franchise. So mine's a little bit more sarcastic here, but it really is just a shout-out to the New Orleans Saints because just a bunch of players stepped up where I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to depend on this again. Not even just next week, like throughout the season. So shout-out to the Saints coming together, getting a big win, proving a lot of people wrong. Nice win.
A lot of weird things can happen in the Superdome, for sure.
That is true.
Weird things can happen down there, but you know what must have felt really weird for Derek Carr? Being protected. They came into this game last in the league in pass blocking grade, but you know what? 75.3 pass protection grade in this game. No sacks allowed. Their offensive line only gave up 5 pressures and 1 Derek Carr hit. And look, we've gotten on the Falcons pass rush.
Right.
We've gotten on them. But for one team or the other, this was going to be an opportunity to have a good day. And for the Saints offensive line, it was their best day of the season. Derek Carr from a clean pocket, 13 of 18, 198 yards, 2 touchdowns, 83.1 passing grade. Any quarterback can succeed if they're left clean in the pocket at this level. The Saints have not been able to do it very much this season between injuries and poor performance and young players playing. You mentioned Trevor Penning. I'll mention him just right now as my most impressive guy because we've never seen a game like this from him. It was his best career game, that 92.7. Dominant, moving people in the run game. 94.7 run blocking grade. Only allowed 1 pressure on the day. And that's a performance where you go, okay, it is the Falcons, but we've at least never seen him do this before, and it was dominant. Maybe this is the first of a stack of weeks where we feel like, all right, we have Talisi Fuaga, who's had a pretty good rookie season on the left side. You have Trevor Penning going on the right side now. Maybe you start building this offensive line again because they need it in the worst way consistently week in and week out. But if nothing else this week against the Falcons, just an inept pass rush from them. That's just what they have right now. The Saints' offensive line was really good in this game, and I haven't gotten to say that very often this year.
My most impressive, I think it has to be Marquez Valdez-Scantling if it's not going to be Trevor Penning, right? I'm glad that you shouted out Trevor Penning, but like I said before, Valdez-Scantling.
Off the street came in and did this.
NFL street. 3 catches on 3 targets, 109 receiving yards in those 2 touchdowns. Just unbelievable, obviously. Rashid Shaheed is down for the year. Chris Olave not in this one because of the concussions that he is going through. He's on IR. So you just looked at this group. And again, this is a situation where you're previewing this game. You're looking at it on paper. You're like, why would I pick the Saints in this game? Why would you ever pick the Saints? And here we are.
That's how they get you.
The problem with the Saints is the theory was always Alvin Kamara, right? Alvin Kamara was kind of the plus factor in this one. Like, all right, well, if Alvin Kamara goes off, then they can keep it close and everything. Alvin Kamara had over 200 all-purpose yards last week. They got killed. Like, that was the one thing where you go, oh, well, if this happens, then they'll be good to go. That happened. And they were not able to get anywhere close to a victory. They're just getting some unsung heroes all over the place. Most disappointing for me, Falcons in the red zone. 1 for 3 in the red zone versus New Orleans here in this game. And Younghoe Koo missed a 53-yarder. Okay, makes sense, 53-yarder. That's kind of tough. 46-yarder, all right, probably got to make that one. 35-yarder, had it blocked. So you're not going to win many games when you attempt 3 field goals and you miss all 3 of them. Just doesn't really, the math's not really going to work out in your favor. Also, shout out to Darren Rizzi, the interim head coach for the New Orleans Saints. Said he clogged the toilet before the game and thought that meant that it was an omen, that the game was going to be crappy. It wasn't. So shout out to him.
I mean, no, I'm not gonna do it.
I purposely served that up for you
did.
And then didn't say anything because I wanted to know if you would take it anywhere or if you would immediately move on to like a most disappointing.
Listen, let's just say this.
Was the most disappointing the plumbing?
No,
because everything else was working.
No,
great
I was just having a thought about this. Many coaches with a pregame routine, and many of them have the same as Darren Rizzi.
Yeah, you get a little nervous.
It's not even a nerves thing. It's just it's like the same thing. It's like
you're also probably up at 3 a.m. So what are you, 2 coffees deep at that point?
Probably I don't drink coffee, but I get it. The pregame routine, I absolutely get it. I can relate to it. I get it. Anyway,
we're breaking down the important stuff here at PFF.
Yeah, no, these are things that matter. Voodoo and pregame routines, and they do.
For this game,
matter.
it did.
Yeah.
For this game, it absolutely did.
Oh, Darren Rizzi gets a 99 for that one. No question.
The plumbing, 0. Most disappointing.
You know what? I got it now. He got it out of his system. That's what it means. The toilet doesn't matter. It's actually anyway. Just the disappointing part of this game for honestly, just the Falcons defensively. Pass rush has been non-existent all season.
Yep.
This game, worst coverage grade of the season. They only forced 1 incompletion and 2 straight games. I know they won last week, but 2 straight games with no takeaways. All things considered, what you said about there was no real reason they should have lost to the Saints, but when your defense just doesn't show up, even though the Saints only scored 20 points in this game, they still didn't make any plays to force anything here. So I get it. You're right. The red zone and the Falcons are kicking woes and all that stuff. It's just the confluence of things. This is how a team with 2-7, that's 2-7 that just fired their coach, this is how they can beat you. And defensively, the Falcons, they have to be better than this. I'm just, the pass rush especially, it's just going to be the thing. When their season ends, this is what we're going to talk about. Because they have the second worst pass rush grade in the league. The Matt Judon trade hasn't worked. There's just nothing their pass rush is giving them. And when you're given not just good quarterbacks or any quarter, you give any quarterback a whole day of clean pockets, you could lose ball games.
No, I'm with you. I want to give the Falcons credit because certainly in those situations where a lot of the scripted drives still, I think it's working out for them. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but I feel like, okay, well, Kirk Cousins had an opportunity to obviously get them back in this game and get close, and I think that stuff is working for them. Bijan Robinson, it's another 100-yard game for him. Tyler Algier, both of these guys had over 5.0 yards per carry. Robinson, another 2 touchdowns in this game. Drake London almost had 100 yards passing, and I think it's their defense that's going to hold them back. And the team's sitting here still at 6-4, but it's not a runaway for the division. A lot of these teams, especially I would say the Bucs, but until they fix their defense, I don't really know how much of a factor they are. It's going to be close down the stretch, but I do think the Falcons are going to enjoy having this couple of game cushion as they still try to figure it out with their defense because it's going to be up and down all year no matter what. Next game, Patriots-Bears. Oh, buddy. Don't look too excited to talk about this one, Dalton. Please.
I'm not.
Please.
This is.
Please.
No, it's
Hold
hard. It's hard to watch.
Patriots win this game 19-3. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded New England Patriots in this game. Tight end Austin Hooper at the very top of the list with an 85.7 defensive tackle. Jeremiah Parms Jr. with an 84.2. Safety Del Pettis with a 78.4 offensive tackle. DeMontre Jacobs with a 76.2. Linebacker Jelani Tavai with a 71.4. And then Drake May in this game, a 64.4. On the other side of things for the Chicago Bears, linebacker TJ Edwards, a top-graded player at an 89.7, Safety Elijah Hicks with an 87.1. Guard Tevin Jenkins, a 79.6. Defensive tackle Gervin Dexter Sr., Gator great, with a 74.6. Running back DeAndre Swift with a 67.4. And then Caleb Williams in this game, a 54.5. Stat that told the story. Unfortunately, there's a lot of bad ones from Chicago that I think we're going to talk about here. But which one did you point out? Which one did you highlight?
Okay, I'm going to take the just short window here before we get into the same long-term freakout that everyone else is getting into. Here's the facts. When the Bears run the ball and they are an entire offense, a two-dimensional offense, they win games. They have run the ball for 80 yards, which isn't that many, but 4 of the 5, I believe, are well over 100 yards. When they've run the ball for at least 80 yards, they're 4-1, and the one loss is the Washington game with the Hail Mary that they should have won. Should be 5-0, but they're 4-1. They run the ball for less than 80 yards, they're 0-4. And it just speaks to, there's all sorts of different angles, so we're going to pick apart every different angle of this here, but it just speaks to if they don't run the ball, and they're one-dimensional, it's too much on Caleb. And there's too much on Caleb when the schemes are just not working. They're another team along with the Jaguars and the Jets and the Cowboys, where not only are they bad on offense, but I don't know what their identity is and what they're trying to do on offense. That's where I'm at with the Bears. There was like a 3-week stretch where I started to get an idea of what they were trying to do. We're going to run off tackle. We're going to run some bootlegs because, we'll get Caleb out in space, and he's an athlete, and he can make plays cutting down half the field and getting him out in space. And we're going to just be a little more on time and in rhythm, and even if we're a conservative offense with a rookie, that's fine. It's gone. Now it's just gone because now they went back to putting, getting in the shotgun and running from the shotgun instead of being under center and running between the tackles, which hasn't worked for them all year. And they are right now the only 2 teams less explosive than the Bears are the Patriots and the Browns. That's the level that we're at here, that they don't have anything downfield, and they only sometimes have things even within the bubble when you talk about a conservative offense. So if they don't run the ball, they stand no chance at all, and they didn't run the ball in this game. They had less than 80 yards again, and in those games are 0-4. So there's more stuff to go. You have plenty more. I have plenty more. But at the very least, in this short-term first 9 games sort of window that I'm looking at here, that's what I see.
Yeah, they stink. This offense stinks. It's essentially what we talked about with the Texans, where they can't score in the second half. That's the Bears all the time, especially when it comes to out of the gate. You highlighted this a couple of weeks ago, how bad this team is starting things out. 1.6 points per quarter in the first quarter, which is 31st in the NFL. I think the Eagles were the only team that had less points in the first quarter.
And they finally scored a touchdown.
Right, so I think the Bears might be dead last in the NFL if I went and looked at it updated. Negative 0.277 EPA per play in the first quarter. That's 29th in the NFL. 0 points with 3 punts in the first quarter versus New England. This is a team that you should beat. This is 100% a team that you should beat. Or at least it should look a lot better than this. 0 points, 3 punts in the first quarter against the New England Patriots. Got to be better than that, man. It's week 10. You got Caleb Williams. You have all those receivers. Oh, okay, the offensive line isn't perfect. It's got to be better than that. It's got to be so. The floor for what this offense is for the Bears has to be so much higher than it is. And that's an indictment on coaching. I hate going after coaches and calling for people's jobs. It's tough. The league is tough. The game is tough when you're going up against professionals. It's hard. I don't want to be this person that just says, oh, fire this guy. This guy doesn't deserve to have a job. I do not like doing that. I really don't. But we're 10 weeks into this season, and very clearly what is being taught, or the coaching philosophy that the Bears have, specifically on the offensive side of the football, is a failure. It is failing. They've already had that player meeting with Shane Waldron that they had, whatever it was, week 3, week 4. It sort of worked for a little bit. Like you said, we sort of started to see an identity. They are getting worse as the year goes on. As they are, and that's the big issue here, because it's one thing to come up with a game plan that works. It's another thing to say, okay, well, how can we make this sort of our focal point moving forward? And it is a completely another thing, whatever the phrase is, to then evolve off of that. And when defenses figure it out, you actually have a counterpunch to them. The Bears don't have a counterpunch. And now we're sitting 10 weeks into the season. They don't have any sort of counterpunch. We already saw that DJ Moore was so pissed he walked off the field and sat on the bench on 2nd and 6 while the play was still going on in the first quarter? 11 minutes in the first quarter? It's I rolled my ankle. Brother, come on, man. We all have eyes. We're seeing what's happening here. Well, I guess I can't be too hard on him, because it's not like he's going to say, yeah, I'm giving up on my team. So, but we all have eyes. We're watching it. We understand what happens. The frustration is overflowing. Since week 7, Bears are scoring on 19.4% of their drives. It's worse than the NFL. They also have 23 straight possessions without a touchdown, which is currently the longest active streak in the league. The offense stinks. And that it should not be nearly this bad. Football at this level is hard. Again, I want to give full respect to the coaches and the people that come up with the game plans and how you execute these things and the players that are executing the plays when they're out there on the field. I want to give all due respect. I really do. It's got to be higher of a floor than this. You have invested too much money in draft capital into some really talented football players to look as bad as it does for the Chicago Bears. And that's my stat, and that is my stat that tells the story, because that is the stat that has told the story for this entire season for the Bears. And the problem is that this was the last like theoretical win that you should have had if you were the Bears. Because after this week against the Patriots, you go Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit, San Francisco, Minnesota, Detroit, Seattle, Green Bay. How many games are you winning out of that? 2 maximum?
Yep.
It feels like the Bears are winning 2 more games this season.
Maybe.
And that is if their offense gets better.
They're currently I don't know.
The Bears,
I don't know what the lines are, but they're
the Bears
an underdog
in their
in all
current
of those
state
games.
lose every single other game that they have in their schedule. And it's the NFL. That's not how it works. I don't think it's going to happen. But team's bad, man.
Yeah, no, I think, and again, my most disappointing is Shane Waldron. My most impressive, I'm going to give credit to the Patriots secondary, and here's why. Patriots, okay. So you mentioned it. I think you mentioned the right thing. Bears have talent, right? We've got DJ Moore. We've got Keenan Allen. We've got Rome Odunze, first-round pick. We've got Cole Kmet. We've got all these things, right? And that was the idea is, well, he's got the best supporting cast ever that a number 1 overall pick's ever had, right? I'm not even going to so much put this on Caleb, okay? We got all these weapons. We have all these things. We got a shiny new offensive coordinator. We have all that stuff. Patriots came out. The New England Patriots came out and ran man coverage on half their plays yesterday, on half of the Bears' offensive plays yesterday. Caleb Williams versus man coverage went 7 for 17 with 72 yards and a 46 passing grade, all right? So I figured, okay, off day, the Bears are running cold. They're demoralized from the last 2 games. For the season, with all of those weapons, the Bears the Bears' passing grade and receiving grade against man coverage and their EPA per play against man coverage is the 3rd worst in the NFL. We have all of these weapons, and we're not winning one-on-one, and we're not scheming to beat man coverage when teams are going to it. So I go, okay, so they had 1 play in this game longer than 12 yards, despite seeing all this man coverage. I've got all these receivers that everybody tells us are fantastic, and at certain points in their career have been fantastic players, right? And yet, teams are lining up. The New England Patriots lined up one-on-one against them a lot in this game, and they're the ones, Christian Gonzalez and the New England secondary were the guys that went in there and won the battle against those guys outside. So we're not getting the schemes. We're not winning on the outside one-on-one. It looks a lot like the same issues that I see, again, from the Jets and the Cowboys and the Jaguars, where there are no, you mentioned it, there's no layers to the offense. It's just kind of, they go out there and they run some base concepts, and it's vanilla. And you can have as much talent as you want in the NFL. If you're that vanilla, you're not going to score a whole lot. You're seeing the same thing from the Jets. Well, but they have Rodgers and Wilson and Adams, and we'll get there in a minute, but they still don't score points because they don't do anything. That's where the Bears are at.
Yeah. My most disappointing is Caleb, and it's maybe less of Caleb and just Caleb's situation, I think is what I think is most disappointing here with the Bears, because this is his lowest PFF passing grade without having a recorded turnover-worthy play in the game. His time to throw is it's still high, and eight sacks taken in this game. I mean, sure, it's the offensive line in front of him, but also he is now seeing ghosts. Caleb is not getting better.
This is as indecisive at any point since we've watched him since he was, 19 years old,
yes.
even at Oklahoma.
Yes.
It's as indecisive
Correct.
a game as he has ever played.
Yep.
Ever. He's not even, usually in the past, if he was indecisive, okay, he would at least run around and improvise and do all that stuff. Mm-hmm. He's indecisive in the pocket and just he don't even know where to go with the football right now. And honestly, there's a lot of times not only, I shouldn't say he doesn't know, but he's looking out there. I'm telling you, no one's open. And somehow you have these three guys on the outside and still no one's open. Just getting locked up. It's crazy. The entire operation the Bears are rolling out there right now, especially in the passing game.
My most impressive Patriots pass rush. Took advantage of Chicago Bears offensive lines not playing very well. 7 sacks total, 13 tackles for loss, 20 total pressures, 33.5 pass rush win percentage. Hell yeah. Love it. I think the Patriots are playing a little bit better than I thought that they were going to. Certainly through the first couple of weeks of the season, I thought it was going to be rough for this team, but they're playing all right. It's not like the floor has totally just fallen out from under their feet. Like, this is a team that very clearly in this game, if you don't play a fundamentally sound football game, they can beat you. They can score enough points to beat you. And I want to give them their credit.
And going to Drake May, for as much as we were scared of it with the O-line and, is he going to get hurt or whatever, but going to Drake May seems to have given this team at least a jolt, right?
As long as May wasn't going to get hurt, that was always the right call. Because I think I might have said this, but I don't know if I would have fully believed it. Like, I don't think that Drake was going to regress as a quarterback. It was just a matter of, is he going to get killed back there? And as long as you tell me he's healthy,
he at least, and I know they lost.
I
know they lost the Tennessee game last week, but even that play at the end of regulation last week, like, that's the sort of thing where, okay, the rest of the team can keep playing hard. They know they're going to pick in the top 5. We're aware of this, but like, they can keep playing hard and keep wanting to progress as the really young team that they are, because he's in there. And because, in this game, I think he was okay. He made one back-breaking mistake, but his defense got him through it, right? And it wasn't great. I think he had 2 big-time throws and 3 turnover-worthy plays, but I think the Patriots are at least believing, like, okay, this is going in a direction that we kind of like, and we'll play hard, and you come away with wins like this when you execute, because the other team isn't.
All right, let's move on. Was there anything else you want to say about this?
No, I'm good on that.
All right. Broncos, Chiefs. What?
You talk about voodoo. There's more voodoo in Kansas City than there is in New Orleans, I think.
It's unbelievable, man. It really is. BJ Kissel, who was a good friend of mine, he was the Chiefs reporter for a lot of years. Now he works for KCSN, Kansas City Sports Network. And he tweeted after the game, he's like, you know what? I can kind of understand why people hate us now after the Chiefs, because it's like, what else could go right for the Kansas City Chiefs? They win this game 16-14 over the Denver Broncos, who played a hell of a game. Let's get to the Chiefs' top 5 graded players as the winners of this game. Defensive tackle Chris Jones at the top of the list with a 79.2. Safety Justin Reed with a 77.9. Linebacker Drew Tranquil with a 77.3. Tight end Travis Kelce a 76.3. And defensive tackle Mike Pennell with a 70.9. Patrick Mahomes in this one a 59.4 overall grade. On Denver's side of things, defensive tackle John Franklin Meyer with a 74.4. Wide receiver Devon Vele with a 73.3. Defensive tackle DJ Jones a 72.9. Cornerback Patrick Surtain with a 72.8. And then edge rusher Nick Bonito with a 70.5. Bo Nix in this game outduels Patrick Mahomes. That's what PFF says. 72.6. So tell the story. What do we got here?
Well, I'll go with one element of the Broncos here on defense. I know you're going to expand on it, but the Chiefs, the Broncos, they bent but they didn't break. And the Chiefs went 1 for 4 in the red zone, okay? And there's 2 things I think you have to do to beat the Chiefs, okay? You got to at least slow down Mahomes and not let him score 40. Then you have to block Chris Jones. And Jones, he was a highest graded player. He's going to have a good day, but he didn't kill Bo Nix back there. So it kind of did the 2 things that you need to do to win a ball game. The Chiefs in the red zone had only 1 touchdown and 3 field goals. They ran 16 plays down there and only gained 31 yards. Mahomes went 5 for 10 for 18 yards and a 35 passing grade. So, look, the Broncos, they kept themselves in this game. Bo Nix put them in position to win the game at the end, and obviously Leo Chenal blocks the field goal. But this Denver team, I think, especially, they're a young team. And it's Sean Payton really in his first real year of trying to get this team to compete after last year and the Russell Wilson and all that. He should feel really good. I know they lost this game, but he's going to look back and feel really good about this, because after last week's game in Baltimore where they didn't stand a chance, okay, how are they going to respond, right? They played well in this game. I don't think the Broncos did a whole lot necessarily wrong in this game. They just, the Chiefs, They make the magic play that wins them a ball game every week, right? Because that's what they get. But no, I think the Chiefs, they didn't finish drives, and it was a low-scoring game like it generally is now in Kansas City. And the Broncos gave themselves a shot to win, and they didn't finish their one drive that could have won them the ball game. So to me, that's kind of – but their defense, and you're going to have more on this, absolutely was good enough to win. Honestly, Bo Nix was good enough to win this game too.
100%.
All the way around. The Broncos played. They had it, and they just just one play makes a difference in the scoreboard. But they did everything you'd want to do against the Chiefs to beat them.
Broncos players after the game, and I don't blame them. I think Sean Payton said this as well. They're like, we played well enough to win that football game. And obviously they're on one side of things, so they take it a little bit further and say they say emphatically, like, we played better. We were the better team. And obviously it was very close. It came down to the end. The Chiefs ended up winning the game. So, but I don't think they were wrong. They're right in that conversation. They played fantastic. 5 defensive players in this game graded above a 70. You had 8 total players grading above a 67. Like, this is a really good defensive performance from everybody on this team. John Franklin Meyer, DJ Jones, Patrick Surtain, Nick Bonito, Jonathan Cooper. Like, all these players that we had mentioned before. Cody Barton's in here. Jordan Jackson's in there. Like, so many good defensive player performances, and the floor was really high from this group. They were just very clearly very well prepared for this Chiefs team. They really frustrated what the Chiefs wanted to do, and they gave themselves a chance to win the football game. And so, to me, my stat that told the story is just another really great performance. I mean, Zach Allen picks off that screen pass. Maybe it is even a little bit different for the Denver Broncos. So just overall, I feel like the Broncos are playing a lot better than people wanted to give them credit for going into this season. I think Bo Nix is a reason why. I think people looked at Bo Nix as I think that it's some jokes left over from the Russell Wilson, Nate Hackett era, right? Where they make the trade for Russell Wilson. Nate Hackett's the head coach. It's such a dumpster fire in Denver that I think people were just like, oh, they're going to be bad forever. This team's terrible.
Well, I don't think it's just Russ. I think it's since Peyton Manning left, they have had nothing at quarterback at any point. You're talking about that's since 2015.
But then they make the Russell Wilson trade. I think it was the big like meme LOL part of it. Bring in Sean Payton, and it's like, oh, Peyton and Russ are disagreeing and all that. You move on from Russell Wilson. People think that the Broncos are going to be dead forever because of that massive dead cap hit that they have. They go out and draft a really experienced quarterback. Sean Payton works with them and goes, all right, well, here we go. And I think Bo Nix, I think a lot of people just didn't like Bo Nix either. There's a lot of jokes about Bo Nix and just like, oh, the guy can't play at the pro level. It was a sort of like a Mickey Mouse offense, as they would say. It's a make-believe offense that they were playing in Oregon. And it just wasn't true. Now, was he asked to push the ball deep down the field? No, not as much. But my most impressive in this game is Bo Nix. 22 for 30. Passing with 215 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and he continues to do what he needs to do for this team to win football games and be competitive. And so it's really just a hat tip to how well the Denver Broncos are playing. The Kansas City Chiefs winning, I mean, it's just sort of business as usual, and they find ways to win football games, and this was probably the biggest find a way to win a football game that they have had. But I want to give kudos to the Broncos and Bo Nix. This isn't just a fluke. This isn't just like, they won a couple of games here. They're playing good football. And I should say specifically, they are playing high floor football. You're not really just going to come in and play the Denver Broncos and they're going to completely melt down. Like, that's not what's going to happen. There's a well-coached football team. I think Bo Nix is playing at a high floor level. I want to say high level, but it's not like he's, like win an MVP or anything like that. But yeah, I'm repeating myself now. I'm so impressed by this Broncos team. The defense shows up every single week. Bo Nix is getting better every single week. I saw this from Next Gen Stats. Cortland Sutton versus Trent McDuffie in particular. 7 targets, 5 catches, 67 yards. I mean, it was just a good day for the Denver Broncos. And I'm glad that they got close in this one, because I do think it's going to be something where they go, wait a second, that's the last undefeated team in the NFL. We should have won that football game. And that's something that I understand. There's no moral victories in the NFL. This maybe wasn't a moral victory. It was one hell of a motivating loss in a good way for this team. And I'm excited to watch Denver moving forward.
A couple of things there. 4 of their 5 losses are by 1 score, all right? And you look at those 4 games, all right? Seattle's a decent team. Pittsburgh, playoff team. Chargers, playoff team. Chiefs are the Chiefs, right? Denver, even with the loss, should not hang their head here. 1, they responded to just a whooping they took last week in Baltimore. And 2, they went toe-to-toe with a 2-time Super Bowl champion, the 2-time defending. So they should feel like, okay, you know what, guys, we're good enough, and we can make a playoff run. Because that 7th spot in the AFC, if I'm being real, it's theirs for the taking. That's where they're at. They're the team sitting in it right now. It's really only 2 teams, I think, behind them that could catch them for it, the Colts and the Bengals, right? And we know the Bengals can do what they do, but they really only have 3 or 4 good players on their whole team. and the Colts
really good players.
The really good players, of course, at the right spots, and the Colts don't really know what they want to do at quarterback. So the Broncos, they're stable. They've got Sean Payton. Bo Nix, you want the big Bo Nix stat for me?
Sure, give it to me.
Last 7 games, 1 turnover-worthy play in 7 games. You talk about high floor. I think it's a big theme today. The team that doesn't screw things up often wins ball games, right? We've talked about it in several games. Bo Nix doesn't screw it up.
Twitter told me he couldn't play, though.
He doesn't have to go out there and throw for 500 yards a week.
Interesting.
He can be good without doing that.
Interesting.
And, Patrick Mahomes, same thing. You know why he wins? He doesn't screw it up. So, no, Bo gave him a chance to win. Most impressive, I'll go on the defensive side. Nick Bonito, good player off the edge. They got a lot of good players. The Broncos were also the more physical team in this game. 6 pressures for him, a sack. Had another sack that was negated by an illegal contact. 24% pass rush win rate right there. I mean, they got guys, just seems like a different guy every week steps up for the Broncos.
Defense good, right? Man.
It's Bonito. It's Riley Moss. Some days Surtain's a superstar. You've mentioned Cody Barton before. It could be Jonah Ellis. I mean, it could be anybody on this defense. This week, Bonito, and I'll say once again, actually, their highest graded player there, John Franklin Myers. He would look really good in a Jet jersey. And on the other side of that, the Chiefs' offensive line, this was their worst game of the season. 55.6 grade across the board, 44.5 run blocking grade. The Broncos were the more physical team in this game too. And I think if you have a game where you're more physical than the Chiefs and their offensive line, along with Mahomes, really, especially the interior, that's really the core of this offense, and everything works off of that. If you're more physical than the Chiefs, then you really give yourself a chance. The Broncos did a lot right in this game, aside from protecting the last field goal. So it is what it is. I think, again, it's another game they can turn the page and go, you know what, we can. They have shown, I think, us for 10 games that they can compete and possibly get that last playoff spot.
Most disappointing for me was Xavier Worthy. It just feels like he's so much more. He's like just a specialized player for them. And I was thinking that with Rashee Rice out, he was going to have the opportunity to be a little bit more. But 1 catch on 4 targets for 11 yards. I know he had that bomb that was very close to being completed that was out of bounds. That obviously inflate the stats if he hit something like that, and that's why he's on the team. But I thought he was going to be a little bit more moving forward, and he hasn't been. So I think that's a disappointing part of this team. Need to talk to you guys about what I consider the most important part of an outfit. All right. It's the hat.
It's true.
It's a hat. It's a good hat. It's not just any hat. It's a good hat. You can't have hats that, if you wear it all the time, you get sweaty. All right, it breaks down. It's not a good hat, right? Can't have one where if you get a little bit wet.
It's just shot. It never feels the same.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a good hat.
Yeah.
Ones that lose their structure. Not with these bad boys. Mail-in hats are fantastic. They're sponsoring this podcast, and they're not your average hats. They are premium grade, really durable. Some of the best hats that you're ever going to find out there, whether it's like tailgating, working out, golf course, even you're coming back from work, maybe your hair's not exactly the way you need it to, you're going on a date night, something like that, you're going out, whatever. You could throw on one of these hats and they're nice enough. They look fantastic. They can be used in all different situations. They're built to last. These things are going to last forever. I have 2 of these hats. I have a black one and I have a white one. These are my main hats that I wear all the time. Actually, I lied because now I have 3 hats. One of them is literally like just a workout hat. And I wouldn't even have to use it. Honestly, I could have gotten by with 2, but I use them in all situations because I know that I am somebody who I like to work out with a hat. I don't know why. I just like.
I'm with you.
It's just that I do not have to care about my hair at all whatsoever. I'm just wearing a hat. It's sort of just like the winter arc, like they say. You're putting on the hat and the hoodie and whatever, and you're just getting after it. This hat's gonna last me forever, and I'm really excited about it. The Hydro collection, when it gets cold to stay warm, it's fantastic for you. They've got a full thermal collection right now. I'm just looking at it right now. Different levels of warmth to help you stay warm during the winter. If you were looking for a hat that is as tough as you got to check out Mail-In. They are fantastic. You won't wear anything else after you get one of these hats. I guarantee it because that's where I am right now. Any situation at all whatsoever that I need a hat, I'm just going to be. And even situations where I maybe wouldn't have thought about wearing a hat because sometimes I think that hats, kind of dress you down a little bit too much. Not these hats. They're fantastic. So make sure you check it out. If you're looking for the world's most durable hat, look no further than Mail-In. Go to mailin.com, MELIN.com. That is Mail-In to put this hat to the test. I guarantee it's going to pass it with flying colors. Let's get to the next game here. Bills-Colts. Bills, It didn't look like this one was going to be a runaway, but then it looks like it at the end of the day. 30-13, the Bills just keep on winning. Highest graded players in this game for the Buffalo Bills, edge rusher Greg Rousseau with a 90.1, safety Teron Johnson with an 85.5, linebacker Dorian Williams with a 77.2, linebacker Terrell Bernard with a 70.0, and then cornerback Christian Benford with a 74.9. Quarterback Josh Allen in this one, an 80.1 overall grade. On the other side of things, for the Indianapolis Colts, defensive tackle DeForest Buckner with an 88.6. Cornerback Kenny Moore, the second, with a 78.4. Wide receiver Alec Pierce with a 77.5. And then wide receiver Josh Downs, a 73.2. Cornerback Sam Womack, the third, rounds things out at number 5 with a 72.3. Quarterback Joe Flacco in this one, handful of turnover-worthy plays. Ends up spitting out a 60.6 overall grade. Is that the total of the story? What do you got?
Just quick correction. There was 30-20. We don't want to take a touchdown away from Joe Flacco or Alec Pierce.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Alec
That's
Pierce,
on me.
Alec Pierce with a late touchdown. It's always good.
True.
To get those, right?
True. Can't
Especially,
take it
I'm sure somebody in fantasy was thrilled.
I was gonna say I can't take that away from the Alec Pierce fantasy football owners.
You want something weird? I was watching this game, and the funny part to me, I'm gonna go on the Bills side of this. I think they're more like the Chiefs than we think they are. And look, I know they don't have Stephon Diggs, and they didn't have Keon Coleman in this game. They didn't have Amari Cooper in this game. But they ran 70 offensive plays officially in this game, all right? They only lost yardage on 3 of them, and one of them was a kneel down, and the other 2 they lost 1 yard. They have the 4th fewest negative plays in the NFL this season. Chiefs, Cardinals, Niners, Bills. Those are the teams that are...
Cardinals are in there?
They run the hell out of the ball, yeah. Those are the teams.
Good for the Cardinals.
This is getting, and I think the Commanders. Actually, no, the Commanders are middle of the road there. They can be all or nothing sometimes. But teams that are not moving backwards on offense, right? Because there's a lot of people that thought, they traded Stephon Diggs. What are they going to do? They're not going to be able to move the ball or do anything. I'll tell you. You know what? That's a theme of the day. Don't screw it up. And you know what the Bills are doing? They're not screwing it up. And you look at this game, and the Colts had 4 turnovers. And the Bills did have 2, and the 2 interceptions from Josh Allen were pretty bad. But they don't move backwards. And I could honestly point to those 2 plays, those 2 interceptions from Josh Allen, and go, it's really the only 2 really bad offensive plays the Bills made the entire day. And their defense made up for it. Complimentary football, right? I'm not going to tell you Josh Allen was great in this game, but the Bills as a unit, I think in a very similar manner to the Chiefs, they just keep moving forward a little bit at a time. They run the ball with James Cook and Ray Davis and Josh Allen, for that matter, best red zone weapon in football. The receivers, they were down arguably their top 2 guys. They're shorthanded. They're making it happen with Curtis Samuel and Mac Hollins and Khalil Shakir, and Dawson Knox with a big catch, but they just have so many weapons, so many threats, and Josh Allen's the general of it all that they're not as explosive. You don't see them making it as many deep completions as in past years. But they just keep moving forward. And it feels like you watch this game, the Bills didn't play all that well offensively, and even the 2 interceptions, and somehow they're still at 30 points. And this is, I think that's it's funny that they're going to play this week now, coming. I think offensively they're a lot more like the Chiefs than we think they are. And it just, the style of it is, okay, we're not explosive, and we'll just accept that. Just like the Chiefs after Tyreek Hill left. All right, we're just going to have to win without Tyreek Hill, without Stephon Diggs, without being that team that chucks it 60 yards, even though we could try. Quarterback has the arm, but if we can't get open downfield like that, then we have to create shots and run the ball and do all those things. I think it's something, all those teams I just mentioned, you were like, what, the Cardinals? Well, yeah, there's a serious value in just not moving backwards.
Of course.
And just making positive plays, even if they're 2 or 3 yards. You'd rather be in 2nd and 7 than 2nd and 13, right? I mean, those minute differences and just being able to not screw it up offensively, those are the teams that are scoring points right now.
I think it's a really good point, especially when you kind of combine that with what I wanted to bring up, and that's points off turnovers. It's not like, one team was playing perfect and the other one wasn't. There were chances for both of these teams, and the Bills had 17 points off turnovers, and the Indianapolis Colts had 3. And that's ultimately sort of how you get to this point in the game. I know you said that the Colts scored a late game touchdown to kind of make this one a little bit closer, but in reality, reason the Bills were able to pull away as much as they were is because they were able to score the points off of turnovers. They were able to capitalize. Not only are you making the turnovers, it's what you do with the possession, and certainly going into, all right, this is not a team that really goes backwards. Well, that means that when you get a turnover, you can expect this team to go on a little bit of a drive here, right? It's not something where, now it's just going to be 3 plays and they're going to be punting the football. Normally, they're picking up at least 1 or 2 first downs. They're not going backwards like you mentioned, and so I think the points off of turnovers is a big-time stat that told the story. My most disappointing is also just Joe Flacco to me. I mean, in this game, 3 turnover-worthy plays, 1 big-time throw in this one. But to me, his arm just does not have the juice. And watching Joe Flacco yesterday and then watching Shane Steichen afterwards, so I didn't watch this, I read this as a quote where he was like, Joe's a starter until he's not. Like, essentially, like, you don't have to ask me this every week. I'll make this change, and you guys will know when I make the change. But as of right now, I'm not even thinking about it. Joe's the starter. And when you have a performance like Joe Flacco gave you yesterday, which it's not like it's the worst quarterback performance I've ever seen, but very clearly, like, there are things that are left to be desired with what he's doing. And I think 2 of those turnover-worthy plays, at least the ones that I can think of off the top of my head, come from he's just older now. Like, the arm just doesn't have the juice. Unless you become a heavy, high anticipation type of a quarterback, which Joe Flacco was not in his prime years, right? There are some quarterbacks that age more gracefully, right? Like Drew Brees aged gracefully. Tom Brady aged gracefully. And even Tom Brady still had some juice left in his arm, even when he was...
Tom could probably still play right now.
Right. So he's not exactly the same, apples to apples comparison, but like Drew Brees is one of them. Peyton Manning is one of them, right? These are quarterbacks that when they were at their prime, when they were the best in the NFL, they're high anticipation passers. That was never Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco was this big-armed quarterback. So when all of a sudden you don't have the big arm anymore and you're trying to learn the game at a higher anticipation type of a rate, not that he didn't do it at all before, just trying to cover all my bases because I think people are going to come after me when Joe Flacco's been certainly good when he was in his prime. It's just not his game. So now that he doesn't have the fastball, you're starting to see turnover-worthy plays every single week. So Joe Flacco really give you the best chance to win football games at this point? Is Joe Flacco really the best investment for where your franchise is going? It's not like the Colts are on we had this conversation 2 weeks ago where I think you were saying, you were like, the floor that Flacco gives you could be enough for this team to get to the playoffs. Now, it still was the word could, not will make the playoffs. And now you're sitting here a couple weeks in and I'm looking at this past game with Flacco and I go, is this worth it? Is this really worth it for you? And the answer that I keep coming back to and the conclusion I keep coming back to is like, wow, yeah, they really benched Richardson because he gave up on that play. And somebody was real pissed about it. Whether it was Steichen himself, whether it was the players,
I think it's the other players.
Whether it was Irsay, like whatever it was, like somebody was pissed. Because I don't know how you can watch what Joe Flacco gave you yesterday and not even entertain Anthony Richardson being back out on the field. I'm not trying to say he's perfect. People are going to come after me and be like, oh, Richardson wasn't playing good anyways. I agree. But you got to go out on your sword. And I don't think that playing Joe Flacco is the Colts going out on their sword. So that's most disappointing to me is just Flacco and sort of the type of quarterback that he is right now. It's just a very low ceiling for me, given the fact that he has to be a high anticipation passer, and he's not.
Personally, I don't think they have a sword to fight with. I might be jumping the gun here, but I have at least a strong feeling that their franchise quarterback is not currently on the roster. And one of the things I'll keep it to this season first. That's just me. I've never been the biggest Richardson fan because of the lack of accuracy. I don't think they would do much better right now with either quarterback in there. And at that point, I get it where it's like, okay, play Richardson to get the reps just to see.
He needs to play at some point, right?
Even if it's unlikely that it's going to get substantially better, just to see. I get it. Right now, there was it 1 game back of the Broncos, I think, in the playoff race. So I think they're still believing like, hey, we could swipe that last playoff spot. If we get to 2-3 weeks from now and they can't, then they'll probably switch back and go, okay, let's just see.
And I think you should, right? I think Bryce Young and Will Levis are the examples of like, hey, just put him back out there.
But here's the facts with the Colts. Their defense is not good enough. Hasn't been all year. This is not the same defense we've seen the last few years where it was at least spunky enough to keep them. They might have a weakness or two. This defense has been a mess all season. Even in this game where the Bills didn't play that well, they scored 30 points. And the injuries on the offensive line is what I'm looking at now. Will Fries has been done for the season. Ryan Kelly didn't play in this game again. He's missed a couple of games. You got a rookie, Tanner Bortolini, starting at center. Bernard Ryman tried to go in this game, played like 10 or 12 snaps. He came back out. Look, through the first 6 games, the Colts had the highest graded offensive line in football. Their last 4 games, they're 18th. The one thing that they could do when their offensive line was healthy was just keep riding it, and that might be the thing that's a playoff caliber offensive line, one of the best in the league. Now you're playing most of this game with 3 starters out from what originally was an elite unit. Flacco's not going to succeed. Richardson not going to succeed all that much behind this offensive line in its current form. And I think that I said it last week, I think it got forgotten that Bernard Ryman didn't play against Minnesota, and that's not the team you want to be missing offensive linemen. This Bills team, and should I jump into most impressive real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
You also don't want to be missing your starting left tackle when Greg Rousseau is on the other side of the field.
Not good. Not a good recipe.
I'm gonna tell you something with Greg Rousseau. Okay, let's just clear this up real quick. He's still not 25 years old yet, and it feels like to me
he's crazy.
It feels like to me he's been in the league forever. I'm going to use the word. I'm going to mess around and use the word right now. Greg Rousseau is an elite player.
Wow.
He's an elite player in the NFL.
Wow.
I
don't disagree with you.
Ninth highest graded.
He's playing great.
9th highest graded edge defender in the league right now. 7th most pressures in the league right now. This is a superstar. He's been on an absolute burner lately. Graded a 90 in this game, all right? Couple of run stops, couple of pressures, big strip sack of Flacco, I believe, in the second half. And you want the fun part, the run defense part. Because the one thing I worry about with the Bills is their run defense. The linebackers were better in this game. Greg Rousseau, I got a crazy stat for you I found, okay? He played in 41 out of 64 total snaps, okay?
Okay.
When Greg Rousseau, I'll do bad news and then good news. When Greg Rousseau was not on the field, Jonathan Taylor had 8 carries for 106 yards. All right? When Greg Rousseau was on the field, Jonathan Taylor had 13 carries for 8 yards. It's him. It's Greg Rousseau. He's the X factor in this whole defense. And boy, if they could play him every single snap, I'm sure they would, because he is now actually the more I watch him, he's now far and away their best defensive player. And he's just
Oh, yeah.
What he's becoming right now through these last, I think especially the last 5 or 6, I think it's like the 3rd week in a row I've done him as most impressive, because he's taken games over. Run game, pass game, everything. And it's silly that he's still only 24 years old. This is becoming one of the elite players in football. I think we got a boatload of elite edge defenders, right? Watt and Garrett and Parsons and all these guys. Mm-hmm. Rousseau, he's creeping his way into that class of guys. And man, the Bills probably could not be happier to see that right now on their defense.
Love it. I'll shout out the Bills secondary just because they had a great day. Rapp had an interception and a pass defended. Teron Johnson had an interception. He also had another interception dropped, and he had those 2 passes defended. Christian Benford with a forced fumble in this one. So the Bills are just playing really good football. They are. And their record shows it. And yeah, they got Josh Allen, which I think is sort of, it's weird to say like the sweetener on top, but like the rest of the team's just playing really well. You have Greg Rousseau on the defensive line. You have the secondary playing very well. You've got a mix of wide receivers that are really showing up. You've got a run game that's very complimentary right now. The Buffalo Bills are just one of the more complete teams right now. Are they playing the Chiefs this week?
Yeah.
They do play the Chiefs this week?
Yeah, this coming week, yeah.
Wow, 4:25 game in Buffalo.
This game too, if there's a thing I'm looking at going into next week, especially this was a pretty good offensive line run game. They played well. The 2 linebackers, Dorian Williams and Terrell Bernard, we've gotten on them a lot this year. They've been struggling. Both had really good games in this one. If that carries over to the Kansas City game, and maybe they're starting to figure it out at linebacker, then we start talking about the Bills' defense as a whole, because I think that's still the biggest weakness on their team. Mm-hmm. But if they can get that going at linebacker, then we have a different conversation.
All right, let's move on to the Titans-Chargers. Chargers win this game 27-17. I think a lot of people had the Chargers winning. It's a little bit of a back-and-forth performance. I think Will Levis certainly played better than most people thought, but Chargers ended up winning this game. Chargers, maybe the highest floor of, it feels like, any team in the NFL at this point, which certainly just flows into their ceiling when they're playing really well. Let's look at the top 5 graded players for the Chargers. Guard Zion Johnson with a 72.8 in this game. Tight end Will Dissly with a 72.6. Offensive tackle Joe Wall with a 72.0. Edge rusher Tuli Tuipulotu with a 71.2. And then rookie wide receiver Ladd McConkey with a 69.1. Justin Herbert in this game continues to be incredible here in the second half of this season. Really since, week 5, 6? He's just been on an absolute tear. 91.6 overall grade. On the other side of things for the Tennessee Titans, linebacker Jack Gibbons with an 84.2. Just, he's all over the field. So many tackles. Cornerback Darrell Baker with a 79.1, wide receiver Calvin Ridley with a 77.5, safety Mike Brown a 76.2, and then cornerback Roger McCreary a 71.5. Will Levis in this game, up and down a little bit, but hey, all in all, 72.5 overall grade. Seth told the story. What do you got?
Okay, so Will Levis did play reasonably well. He didn't have one of his Will Levis turnovers. The Titans' offense was moving for a bit. Again, for stretches of games every week, they look pretty good, and then they shut down for a time. It's kind of what happened here, but if you want to beat Will Levis, just don't let him hit the home runs. And he did hit one early in the game for his touchdown to Calvin Ridley. The Chargers kind of had a busted coverage. It's a coverage they don't usually run, and Jasir Taylor kind of took a bad angle, and Will Levis hit him once. But the Chargers have done a good job this season not allowing this. They've only allowed 11 deep completions all season through 10 games, and the 8th fewest yards allowed on deep balls. So you're talking about a team that has been really good at preventing explosives. And Will Levis, who wants them in the worst way, it is in his DNA, that's the only deep completion he had all day. And honestly, he only attempted 2 other deep balls. If you make Will Levis work, you're probably going to shut him down. Even if you don't get the big turnovers that he's been giving up earlier in the season, it's not what he wants to do, right? And what the Chargers are doing right now on defense, I'm just going to start calling them the Los Angeles Wolverines, because every week now I watch their defense and I just go, it's what Jesse Minter did at Michigan. They don't give up big plays. It looks exactly the same as the national title game against Washington when they just refuse to allow Michael Penix to throw the ball deep downfield. And that's what this team is. And they've got, obviously, a good pass rush, Khalil Mack and Tuipulotu and the guys up front. Linebackers, guys like Diane Henley playing a lot better at linebacker. And you've just got this team effort where, okay, maybe we're the best defense in football. Maybe we're not, okay? Probably, I don't know if they're number 1. I don't know if we'd put them number 1. But
they're one of them.
They're up there because they're really good at just not giving you freebies. They don't give up any explosive plays. You get like 1 a week, just like Levis did. That's pretty much 11 in, 10 games? Or 9 games, I think. They don't give you freebies. They're going to make you earn it. They're going to make you play in that box. And they're same thing. It complements their offense. Do they have the most explosive offense? Absolutely not. But they don't have to work through their defense giving up freebies and having to catch up and having to do that. So, yesterday, okay, they're down 7-0 or 7-3. Okay, that's fine. That's in the box. I'm talking about they're never in a 2-score deficit. They're always in the game. It's because their defense keeps them in games, and it's really the perfect defense to play against Will Levis.
I think the Chargers are probably, over the next 2 years at least, going to be a team that I throw a little cheddar on to win the Super Bowl every year. Just because they have the quarterback to do it, they have the coach to do it, and as they build out the rest of this roster, the roster is only going to get better, and I think the odds are only going to get more in their favor to win the Super Bowl, but maybe you get some fun odds for them before next season. I don't know. We'll see. We got to see how they will end this season. Because
you want my theory on this for this draft?
Sure.
I don't know if they'll be able to do it, if they might be picking too low.
They're not going to get Ashton Genty. They're not going to get him.
With this style of ball,
no, if they ever
found a way to get him,
they're not going to get him.
He's going to Dallas. We know this, but
he's going to get picked too high.
That's just my theory there. If they ever got a guy like that, oh man,
yeah,
the rest of the league would be in trouble. I
can't wait to really get into mock drafts. We kind of have a little bit on NFL Stock Exchange, but it's fascinating, right? Like, Cowboys are one of the teams that you think would pick Boise State running back Ashton Genty. If they don't, maybe the Chargers will be interested in it because the offense becomes incredible. But I think, all right, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves there. Stat that told the story to me, these are two teams that want to play the game the exact same way, right? They want to be great in the trenches. They want to be defense first. They've got these big arm quarterbacks, right? And they want to play the game. They want to run the football. They want to play the game the exact same way. The Chargers, Just a little bit better at it. In basically every single way. They had just a few more first downs. Just a few more total yards. Just a better red zone percentage. Just a few more sacks. Like, it's just like everything about how these two teams want to play the game, the Chargers are better than the Titans. And it's a 10-point victory. Here we go. It's not like they blew them out. It's not like it was like never close. It was not like nothing was going on either side of the football. Chargers are just a little better. And I think that's exactly the stats that told the story, is they play the brand of football that the Titans also want to play. They just do it at a higher level. I know you're shouting this out, and so I'll sort of like usher it in with you. Justin Herbert's been unbelievable. Over the last 4 weeks, he is the number one graded passer in our system, 94.8 overall grade. He only has 5 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. He has 13 big-time throws and 0 turnover-worthy plays. I don't think there's a quarterback who is playing the position, certainly as a passer, better than Justin Herbert has over the last month. He's been unbelievable. But I know he's your most impressive, so I don't want to totally steal that from
and
you.
It's low volume. He only threw 18 passes in this game for $164, but it's the reason PFF grades exist, don't they? It's just a thing. They're working downfield more. He's getting used to the offense. This year, I think the big thing for me, 95.2 passing grade on 10-plus yard throws. Okay, that's second in the NFL behind Lamar Jackson. Last year, he was 18th. And that was the scary part about the last year or two with Justin Herbert, is everything got more conservative. We know he's got the 80-yard arm. He can make any throw on the field, right? But it was getting conservative. Now they're finding ways for him to use his arm, and it's just, oh no, this is a different Justin Herbert we're seeing right now. I think you just mentioned it over the last month. I would say you have Lamar, you have Burrow. You might have Jaden Daniels, and you've got Justin Herbert near the top there.
Justin Herbert, I just looked this up because you said this. Over the last month, so over the last 4 weeks, he is 11th in total passing attempts. He is number 1 in big-time throws, and second place is 4 big-time throws behind him. So he's not even in the top 10 at total passing attempts. And all the big boys, all the big names are in that top 10. He has 4 more than the next closest guy in terms of big-time throws. That's an insane rate to be able to hit that many big-time throws.
With him, it's not fluky because he's just capable of doing it every week.
Damn good at it.
Yeah, the rest of the league has a real problem with Justin Herbert playing like this. This is, I'll be honest with you, I've seen enough of with their defense and the way he's playing now. This team should go to the playoffs.
I agree, and I think that they will, honestly. My most impressive, I want to give Titans fans a little bit of a shout out here. Jack Gibbons, their linebacker. Look, I know he's limited. I know I'm not saying he's an all-pro, right? I'm not saying he's Fred Warner or anything, but he had 15 tackles this past week. Last 3 weeks for him.
He's a baller.
Week 8, Week 9, and Week 10. 90.7 overall grade, 8 tackles. Week 9, 78.1 grade, 11 tackles. Week 10, 77.5 grade, 14 tackles. And so Gibbons is all over the field. Now, can you pick on him in coverage? Yeah, a little bit, but that kind of goes into my most disappointing, which is Kenneth Murray, their other linebacker. I think Jack Gibbons is having to pick up a lot of the slack because Murray's getting picked on a lot. 31.6 overall grade for Kenneth Murray in this game, 41.1 coverage grade for Murray. I think Gibbons is able to shine a little bit brighter because of how Murray has been playing, certainly in this past game, but just want to shout out Jack Gibbons because I think he's been playing well over the last couple of weeks, and give Titans fans a little bit of a shout out here as we did this one.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. My most disappointing for me is the guys in front of him. You usually see better from the defensive line, from the Titans defensive line. I think especially on the inside, Jeffrey Simmons struggled in this game. T'Vondre Sweat struggled in this game. And I think it just speaks to how darn physical the Chargers are, especially on their offensive line with Joe Alt, Zion Johnson having a good game. So, again, you mentioned it. I think at the top, it's the right way to put it. 2 teams walked on the field. One's a little bit better, a little more physical. They execute a little better, certainly have a better quarterback. And they came out with a 10-point win. And I just think the Titans, do they give challenges to their opponents? Absolutely. I think especially with Gibbons and usually these inside guys in the front 7. But no, I think it just sums it up. We can just walk out and not have any controversy that the Chargers are better than the Titans. I think we knew that going in, and we know it coming out.
Eagles-Cowboys. Eagles win this football game by quite a lot. 34-6, the final score here in this one. The Eagles win it big. Their top 5 graded players on the day, safety CJ Gardner-Johnson, with a 92.3. Linebacker Zach Bond with a 90.9. Wide receiver A.J. Brown with an 83.8. And cornerback Isaiah Rodgers with a 79.8. Offensive tackle Lane Johnson at number 5 here on this list to round things out with a 77.2. Quarterback Jalen Hurts a 73.2. On Dallas' side of things, welcome back Micah Parsons, another elite grade for him, a 90.5 with 2 sacks in this game. Cornerback Trayvon Diggs a 77.9. Edge rusher Chauncey Golson with a 76.8. Running back Rico Dowdle with a 73.8. And wide receiver CeeDee Lamb a 69.7. Cooper Rush did not finish the game in this one, but he started 33.4 PFF grade. Yikes. Savin told the story. What do we got?
The Cowboys, they just didn't stand a chance.
Bad football team.
Realistically, yeah. Well, a bad football team without their quarterback now. And they had
worst football team.
They had 146 total yards, and 77 of them were on one drive in the second quarter where eventually I believe it was Zeke Elliott fumbled the ball, and they didn't even come away with any points. They had one play the entire day that went for more than 11 yards. I think it was a Rico Dowdle 18 or 19-yard run. They just offensively, they just don't stand a chance like this against. With this offense, they probably don't stand a chance against at least half the teams in the league. And their defense, we've talked about their defense all year. What are you going to – Parsons is back and he graded a 90. That's cool. But
he's my most impressive. He played extremely well. He
Micah Parsons.
He showcased that he is one of the best defensive players in the NFL.
Yeah.
He really is. And look, we just did an episode on the NFL Stock Exchange show where we fixed the Cowboys. It's not out quite yet. We're going to have it out later tonight. This is Monday night. And we look at this team. It's actually not all doom and gloom. They have a lot of flexibility. They can get a decent amount of free agents next year. They can actually build around the studs that they have on the roster. So it's not horrendous for the Cowboys. It's not like the Cowboys are going to be bad from this point moving forward. But Micah Parsons is one of those players that you absolutely have to build around. The big contract is coming for him. And he showcased that again this week. And you saw that with the elite grade that he had. The stat that told the story, it is just a passing game for the Cowboys. You're just not going to win football game. They already went into this week, even before Dak Prescott got hurt, with the worst run defense team in the NFL and the worst rushing team in the NFL.
Even with Dak, there was only a 20% chance they were winning this game. So
now you have Dak out, and you have the worst run game in the NFL. This game went exactly the way that we all thought it was going to. And Cooper Rush, 13 for 23, 45 passing yards. Trey Lance, 4 for 6, 21 passing yards and an interception. I don't know how many games the Cowboys are actually going to be competitive in this, unless you have CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons absolutely take over games. I don't know how many the Cowboys are winning from this point on. They feel like a similar situation to Chicago. I think the Cowboys are in a little bit better of a situation than the Chicago Bears are because the schedule's not as bad, but it's tough for me to find too much to really hang my hat on if I'm a Cowboys fan. And I think the Cowboys process is really disappointing. That's my big time disappointing part in all this. Dak gets hurt. Obviously, that sucks. He played like an MVP last year. But I think that the Cowboys looked at how well Dak Prescott played last year and said, okay, we want you to do that again with way less resources. We're going to make your offensive line worse. We're going to make your running game worse. And the wide receivers aren't really going to get better at all whatsoever. You just be an MVP again after that. And then I think that they didn't really figure things out on the defense side of the football. You're losing two of your defensive ends. You're losing Dante Fowler Jr. You're losing Dorrance Armstrong. You're okay with that, but DeMarcus Lawrence now takes a step back. The interior defensive line got worse. Eric Kendricks is just not in his prime anymore. He's not the same linebacker that he used to be when he was playing in an all-pro type of a level. So the Cowboys' entire process of how they went through this offseason and how they evaluated their team and where they thought that they were was very poor. And you're seeing that on the field now, and I think you're going to see that in the final record when they're picking in the top 10, probably top 8 of the NFL draft.
Yeah, no, and it's only going to get harder, assuming Parsons is probably going to get the best edge defender contract we've ever seen, most likely.
Yep.
You're going to have 3 guys making more than half your cap. I think it's still going to be hard to build a team around what they have, because usually once you get even just the quarterback making $50-60 million, it's hard enough. But you got 2 other guys making elite contracts. There's going to be a long way to go here in Dallas for sure.
Positives? Most impressive?
Positive.
What do we got?
Trevor, coming into the season, if you were looking at the Eagles roster, what was your biggest question?
It's always linebacker.
It's always linebacker. And they tried several different solutions. Nakobe Dean's been fighting through, but they found one next to Nakobe Dean. That's Zach Bond. This is 3rd straight game grading at least a 90.
Oh, whoa, 90?
Yeah. 90.9 overall in this game, and 3 straight games over a 90. This is really the first chance he's gotten, because you remember him coming out of Wisconsin. He was an edge defender, but he had kind of a weird build, a little bit smaller, and when he was drafted by the Saints, it was with the assumption that he was going to play linebacker. And then they never.
I loved his edge tape at Wisconsin.
He was fantastic.
I know.
I think there might have been a year where he led the country in pass rush rate.
He was awesome.
He was terrific, but there was an assumption when he was drafted that, okay, he's got to play linebacker. He's just not the right size for an edge player. But he never really got a full chance to play linebacker in New Orleans, and this is the first year that he's getting a full shot. He's excelling like crazy. 2 forced fumbles in this game. He only allowed 3 catches for a total of 7 yards. Again, 3 straight games over a 90. This was the one position on this Eagles team, even more so than in the secondary, because I liked what they drafted with Quinyon and Cooper in the secondary, and they got Gardner Johnson back at safety, and Blankenship's really good. I was the most worried about linebacker for this team coming into the year, and Zach Bond, along with Nakobe Dean, who was, I believe, your most impressive guy last week, right?
Yeah.
These two might be fixing this problem, because they have a good D-line, and we know Jalen Carter and those guys up front are talented. We know they have talent in the secondary, more than they had last year, and Cooper DeJean is fixing the slot problem they had last year. If they get this fixed at linebacker, you start talking about Vic Fangio building a really good defense. Zach Bond, I'm not saying he's great at 90 every week, but if he's going to continue to play good football, they've made some real progress now on their defense that could carry them pretty far in the playoffs.
I agree. I think that the elevation of these 2 linebackers has been a big part of this team, and Eagles fans who might be watching this are like, hey, why didn't you talk about my team? This is exactly the game that it was supposed to be.
Took care of business.
You kicked the crap out of them.
Yeah.
The Cowboys are bad. The Eagles are good. There we go. Scoreboard reflected that.
Big game on Thursday.
Yeah, Commanders. That's the one. That's the one I'm really looking forward to. This one was not going to be a contest. The one on Thursday absolutely is. Hey, there are some things that school doesn't teach you, right? How to handle the financial world is kind of one of them, right? We had all the math classes where we're learning, trigonometry and algebra and all those things. But what about more practical things? How to actually handle the financial world, or how to just plan for a successful future? That would have been nice. That includes for your kids, right? Fabric makes it easy to set up an investment account for your children that grows with them and helps prepare them for a great financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kids investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. While your kids cannot invest while they are minors, a UGMA account, that's what it's called, kids investment account specifically, allows you to invest on their behalf, and it gives you in their investments more time to grow. It's a totally online thing. You can set up an account within just 5 minutes. Get started investing with as little as $1 today, and then you just manage your child's account, monitor their investments right from your phone. It is super easy. You can even share your child's unique gift linking with family and friends. So instead of maybe gifts and things that they're going to outgrow, things like that, you can help them out financially. That could be an idea as well. Fabric is partnered with Gerber Life, trusted by millions of families like yours for over 50 years. So join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help their families. Start investing in your child at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That is meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. This is a paid promotion for the Fabric UGMA product, not for investment advisory services. Portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated, custodial services by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investment is subject to risk. Terms apply. Learn more at meetfabric, meetfabric.com. All right, so one of those teams that we talked about who really just does not go backwards very much on offense is the team that we're going to talk about next. I'm, of course, talking about the New York Jets.
Well, they only know backwards.
Just kidding. We're talking about the Arizona Cardinals as they played the New York Jets and came away victorious 31-6. Couldn't help myself there. I had to throw that one out there too.
Oh no! It's listen. A joke isn't a joke if it's true.
Facts, or it still is. It's just really sad.
At this point, I only talk about them because I get paid to.
Arizona Cardinals, top 5 graded players here in this game. Safety Budda Baker with an 89.1. Tight end Trey McBride with an 83.8. Center Froholt. That's a tough one to say every single time. I'm not going to get better at it. Well, maybe I will. I got to get the reps. Got to watch the tape. 81.2. Cornerback Starling Thomas, with a 75.4. And then guard Tristan Colin with a 75.1. Quarterback Kyler Murray in this one, an 80.3. And then the other side of things, look at the New York Jets guard. John Simpson is at the top of the list with an 85.4. Offensive tackle Olu Fashanu with a 75.7. Wide receiver Garrett Wilson, 71.6. Offensive tackle Morgan Moses, 70.0. Guard Elijah Vera Tucker with a 78.4. And then Aaron Rodgers grading out with a 62.7. Staff that told the story. Where are we going, Dalton?
First thing before my actual one, if you would have told me a Jets offensive line was grading like that, I would have thought they were going to the Super Bowl, I'm telling you, before the season.
Oh, just with four offensive linemen in the top
if
five.
You would have told me they'd have been playing like that, man, oh man.
And unfortunately, they all play well.
And
it was 31-6.
We have plenty of other problems.
Interesting.
So I'm just going to throw this out there for anyone who either lives in a cave or didn't watch this game, because I wouldn't blame you if you didn't want to watch this game. I didn't want to watch it, but, it's what we do. Sickos. The Jets don't have a good defense.
No,
These are just
they're bad.
Facts.
They're bad.
And it is not because Robert Saleh got fired. They didn't have a good defense before he got fired this season, and they don't have one now. And at the point when Robert Saleh was still the coach, the numbers were just inflated because they got to play Will Levis and Jacoby Brissett and Bo Nix in the pouring rain. Okay? Now we're seeing by the numbers what the Jets defense actually is, and to be honest, it's one of the worst defenses in football. In fact, their 41.4 team defense grade is their worst in any game in 3 years. This may have been the first game actually where I questioned their effort. The tackling, 7 pressures the entire day. The only sack was Quincy Williams coming unblocked in the highlight play where he knocked off Kyler Murray's helmet, and it's pretty much the only play their defense made all day. Kyler completed 22 of 24 passes. The usual stuff. I got to be honest, Trevor, I have no idea. I don't know whose idea it was to make the Jets the favorite coming into this game.
Well, that's what a lot of people thought with the Texans last week.
I thought that too. And the Texans at least were just so injured. Like the Texans healthy, they blow the doors off the Jets. If they have even if they just have Collins, they're blowing the doors off the Jets.
Probably.
And the Jets in the first half of that game were just awful.
It was bad.
Right.
It was bad.
So now you go into this game, and okay, so let's even take the Texans thing out of it. Jets don't stop the run. They don't tackle, and they don't cover tight ends. The Cardinals run very well and have an elite tight end and break tackles. I'm not sure what the logic was. And it was in Arizona. It wasn't even in New York on a Thursday.
I think it was just the fact that
because they beat the Texans.
No,
and that was it.
I think it's because of the perception of the Cardinals being very up and down.
Well, they're up.
Very clearly.
We'll make another statement 10 weeks in. The Cardinals are good. That's a good team. They haven't given up a touchdown their last 3 home games.
Wow.
So you got a defense. You got a defense playing better, and that's the weak spot. And you got an offense that's. You dig in on some of this stuff. This is a top 5 or 6 offense. Mm-hmm. So I don't really know why the Jets were favored, but just in case there's anybody left that doesn't know, the Jets just don't have a good defense.
No,
they don't have a good They don't have a good anything. I mean, it's just are they? I guess the only conversation we have, are they the single most disappointing team in football?
Yes.
Considering?
Yes. My most disappointing is the Jets tackling. We can talk about a lot of different things on this defense. You can talk about yards given up, talk about touchdowns given up, points given up, obviously. Talk about situational defense, EPA per play, EPA per rush, all that kinds of stuff, how they are in run defense, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't take anything other than discipline and effort to tackle, right? And if you got a lot of missed tackles, to me, that reads like penalties, where you are just unfocused, you're undisciplined, and you're kind of waving the white flag.
Which they've had a problem with for years.
You want to talk about the vibes being down. This team missed 13 tackles against the Arizona Cardinals. They've missed 166 tackles this season, which is 31st in the NFL. You're not a good defense if you're 31st in the NFL in missed tackles. You're just not. Because of all of the situational stuff, you could not have the run defenders up front. You could not have the speed and the pass rushers on the edge. You could not have the corners that you want to play to line up in man or zone or whatever it is. You could not have the safeties to not be as flexible as you want with 2 high or single high or whatever. Like, those are all valid excuses. You could tackle. Does not matter what the scheme is. Doesn't matter, which players are out. You can still tackle. That's a you thing. And to me, again, I'm not trying to call these guys out, but I think the vibes are bad on this team. I think that the discipline is not where it needs to be on this team. And it's hard to tackle at the NFL level. I'm not trying to make it easy, but you're a professional just like they're a professional. When you are 31st in the NFL at missed tackles, it's a massive issue for you. And I think it just is a microcosm of sort of what's going on with this Jets defense and has been, like you said, for a while. My stat that told the story rolls into my most impressive, and it is Kyler Murray. Murray was once again unbelievable. 22 for 24 passing with 266 passing yards and a touchdown, 3 rushes for 21 yards and 2 more rushing touchdowns. Under pressure specifically is where I think things really go over the top for how well Kyler Murray was able to play. 6 for 6 with 84 passing yards and a 90.5 passing grade under pressure. Murray has showcased in a couple of instances so far this season that he can play the quarterback position at an extremely high level. And I said that this was going to be his best year since that MVP season that we saw. What year was that?
2019? No, he was drafted in 19.
No, 21?
That sounds right.
It would have been 21, I think.
Yeah, whichever year they won did they win the division? No, they didn't win the division, but they won 10 or 11 games. Yeah.
No, because would that have been in the 2020 season? Because then he got hurt the next season, and then he came back the next season.
Let me see this.
I think it was 2021. Anyways, this is his best season since his MVP season, and he has come back to MVP form. And he is.
It was 21.
All right, I should have stuck with that. I thought it was 21. He's unbelievable. He's playing at an extremely high level. Kyler Murray is giving this team a chance to win every single week, especially when you combine it with weapons like Trey McBride, which you mentioned, a guy like James Conner, who gives you the ability to start every single drive and every single series off in a healthy way because he's really good and he's consistent on the ground. So Kyler Murray, super impressive in this game. What about you?
I'll take Trey McBride. I'm going to be honest with you. With Travis Kelce off, he's heating up now, but off to a little bit slower start. We know George Kittle's great. I could argue behind Kittle, I think right this minute Kittle's the best tight end in football. I could argue McBride's second. I think he's that good. I mean, only 4 catches for 71 yards in this game, but 90.3 receiving grade. He's got Sauce Gardner draped on his back and throws him off. He hurdles another guy. He makes plays after the catch. He's a really good route runner. I mean, Trey McBride, I mentioned a few weeks ago, I think he's the real X factor in this offense. When McBride produces, then it opens everything else on the outside for Harrison and Wilson, those guys outside. The run game's really good. They use a lot of tight ends in this offense, him and Elijah Higgins especially. This is one of the best tight ends in football. I think no less than top 5. I think I could argue top 3 because he is just hitting this groove right now. Everything he did at Colorado State in college when he was at times a one-man team on a not a great team, he's a problem. I think, look, Kyler Murray obviously is really good at quarterback. Marvin Harrison is obviously the number 1 receiver. I think Trey McBride on this team is the hardest player to defend. I think the way he can move around, he can slot, he can outside, he can inline, wherever you want him, he's an effective player. And I think he's a serious problem when it comes to you have to make a choice now. Are you playing these guys outside and you're leaving the space underneath for McBride? Or are you finding a way to bracket or lean towards McBride and going with Marvin Harrison one-on-one outside? I think it's just there are so many different things in this Cardinals offense you have to defend between the run game that – honestly, it's not even always that complicated, but they formation you to death, and they run right at you. They're really physical. And the outside threats with Harrison and Wilson and Dortch, and then Kyler Murray's legs too, but I think Trey McBride's the hardest one to find an answer for.
Yeah.
I don't know. When you have a tight end,
that's the beauty of a tight end, right?
The teams with elite tight ends like this,
yes.
I mean, Kittle and Kelce and Mark Andrews and Trey McBride's one of those guys,
right?
And the Cardinals offense is a serious problem. I think he's the hardest player to defend on their offense.
I would agree.
I don't know what the answer is right now.
I would agree. Most disappointing before we move on.
I didn't want to go with none for the second in a row because I had it for Cowboys-Eagles. This game actually went how I thought it would go.
Yeah.
And
that's fair.
I went with Aaron Rodgers because he had his second lowest passing grade of the season and only completed 1 pass of 10 or more air yards.
Yikes,
but
yeah.
I think it's more an indictment on just the whole Jets offense. And you know the weirdest part of this game to me? This game went by so quick. The Cardinals had 7 drives and the Jets had 6. There was only 13 total. I don't know if I'd ever seen that, if that's like an NFL record low or something. There was only 13 total drives in this game. It was weird.
That seems extremely low.
That's that's just where it was. I guess both teams just took their time getting it over with.
Where?
and that was just I'd never seen that. The Jets only had 6 drives in this game. I'd never seen something like that.
Speaking of getting it over with, last game that we're talking about here today is Thursday Night Football. We're turning back the clock a little bit. Bengals-Ravens, what a thriller this one was. The Baltimore Ravens end up winning this game by 1 point, 35-34. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded Baltimore Ravens in this game. Defensive tackle Nnamdi Madubuike with a 89.5 at the very top of the list. Safety Kyle Hamilton with an 86.7. Center Tyler Linderbaum with a 79.8. Guard Patrick McCarry with a 72.5. He's playing well since getting kicked inside the guard. Defensive tackle Travis Jones playing well this season. Here's the number 5 on this list with a 72.0, and then Lamar Jackson an 87.8 on Cincinnati's side of things. Jamar Chase, number 1, how could he not be? With an 82 or an 88.2 overall grade. Edge rusher Trey Henderson a 75.5, tight end Tanner Hudson with a 71.0, edge rusher Sam Hubbard a 61.9, and offensive tackle Amarius Mims with a similar 61.9. Joe Burrow in this game a 68.1. Dalton, I kind of want to start here because this is something that I've been looking forward to talking about really since that Thursday, knowing that I was going to put it in the show. Ravens offense on the run, I think, is the stat that told the story here. And I think it's a stat that I really just want to sort of shine a light on it in what I've seen so far this season with Lamar, because we've talked about Lamar Jackson and how he's having an even better season than he was last year when he won MVP, and I really do believe that. Ravens offense, when Lamar scrambles, okay, that's where I really want to focus, because this year he seems more unstoppable on the run outside of the tackles than he's ever been in his NFL career, and the numbers actually do prove that. So when he scrambles this year, the Ravens' EPA per play, so it could be a run from Lamar. He could take off and scramble and run, or he could take off and scramble and still pass. Their EPA per play, 0.404, number 1 in the NFL in those situations for any quarterback. Last year, okay, remember I told you that he's better than he was last year? Last year was 0.185. This year it's a 0.404. It's more than double better this year with how Lamar is navigating those situations. They are, this game in particular against Cincinnati, it was a 0.765. It's insane. Those are, I know some people might be listening to me and they're just like, okay, what are these numbers? They don't mean, trust me, this is nuts. It is nuts how good Lamar is when he is getting out of the pocket and when he is scrambling. I gave you context to say that 0.404 is the number 1 number in the NFL when it comes to EPA per play for quarterbacks that are operating when they are scrambling. And against Cincinnati, he had almost double that. That's how unstoppable this guy was. He's been unbelievable when he's been on the run. And when we talk about him being more efficient, that's really where I see his game being more efficient. He is still as explosive, but what he is a weapon. When he leaves the pocket, he truly feels unstoppable, and those EPA per play numbers back that up. It's an insane clip, and it's crazy that we're talking about this guy playing better this year than he was last year, a year after winning some MVP hardware. So to me, that was the big-time stat that told the story, because after seeing that against the Bengals, I was able to sort of encapsulate exactly what I have been talking about this year with him being even better. And it is his play on the run that I think he has just taken to a truly, truly elite level this season.
I think it's due in no small part to the fact that this is the best year he's had as a passer.
No, absolutely.
I mean, it's
absolutely.
Just, look, he's got 24 touchdowns passing this year. He had 24 in the regular season last year. He's already matched it in 10 games. I mean, he's the hardest. You can debate best quarterback in Mahomes and all that stuff. He's the hardest player to defend in the NFL. What's the answer? Praise off?
Yes.
Outscore him?
Yes.
I mean, I know
every single possession that the Ravens punt, I go, wow, they got lucky.
I think we've hit the point where even if you hold them to a field goal,
sure,
where it's going to get to be a requirement. I know, look, they've lost 3 games because of their defense, and that's going to continue to be a problem. But I think we've hit that point, and this is where we were with the Chiefs and Tyreek Hill when they still had him. Was, well, if you hold them to 3, that's a win. Whatever, just don't let him get a touchdown every single drive, right? And I think we've hit that point with Lamar. I mean, it's. I don't know what the answer is, and I think are they playing Pittsburgh this week? We got some big games coming this week. I'm pretty sure they're playing Pittsburgh this week.
What about you? What's the stat that told the story?
On the opposite end of that, yeah, they're going to Pittsburgh this week. Oh, boy. On the opposite end of that, the Bengals, look, they pressured Jackson on 13 out of 36 dropbacks, which isn't terrible, but they couldn't get him down. It just felt like every single time they had a chance to get him down, they couldn't, right? You have to finish him off. 0 sacks and only 1 hit. And, this is a theme throughout the team. Trey Hendrickson was the only player with at least a 60 pass rush grade. And he had
that's not good.
He had like a 70-something, I don't remember, 73 or something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head right now. But, I mean, it speaks to the theme with the entire team where the Bengals right now are 3 absolute superstars and a bunch of other guys not getting it done.
Yep.
I mean, and on defense, that's look, and I don't, I'm not even gonna. That's just kind of echoing. Honestly, Joe Burrow said it himself. He's like, with the way that me and Jamar and Trey are playing, you wouldn't think we would be a 4-6 team. And this is look, football's not just 3 guys. It's 11 guys on the field at a time. It's 53-man rosters. It takes even more than that to contribute. And the Bengals right now have 3 guys getting the job done.
Our most impressives are sort of the same. Mine is just the Burrow and Chase connection. Yours is Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase in this game, 17 targets, 11 receptions, 264 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns. It's just absolutely insane, the connection that they have. I saw somebody in the chat talking about, like, how does Joe Burrow throw for over 400 yards? He's got 4 touchdowns, and he's got a PFF grade around 70. Well, we have him logged with 3 big-time throws. Also 3 turnover-worthy plays in this game. They just didn't pay for it. They weren't interceptions, but he had the 3 turnover-worthy plays in this game, and he had an adjusted completion percentage below 70%. So anytime that's the case, yeah, it's going to bring down the numbers. Even if you have a lot of big-time throws and a lot of production, that's why PFF exists, because we're trying to look at every single play. But they remain the most impressive because of just that incredible connection. I mean, what was the second to last drive that they had, where it was sort of like a do or die, like they got to have it. First play of the drive, up, drop back, boom, there it is, Jamar Chase, touchdown, like monster touchdown. It's like, come on, like everybody knows he's just throwing it to Jamar Chase, and yet he still gets the football.
Oh, the throw on the last touchdown too is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean they just the connection that these two have had going all the way back to the LSU days. It's just one of the best wide receiver quarterback connections that we have seen over the last decade. And it's been so much fun to watch, and they remain unbelievably impressive. And those two tried to will this team to win the football game. And unfortunately, you're 1 point short, or should I say 1 throw short, with a 2-point conversion that could have won them the game right there. But that's disappointing. And because we get into my most disappointing, it's the Bengals pass blocking. 30 pressures allowed in this game? Holy crap. 50.1 pass blocking grade as a team, like, it's just not good enough. It's just not going to be good enough. It really was, I thought you put it beautifully, Trey Hendrickson, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase trying to will the rest of this 53-man roster into victory. And they came up 1 point short.
That's all there is to it. I think, did I see someone mention Chase is the first player ever with 2 games with 260 yards? I think I saw a stat like that. And he's leading the whole Triple Crown race right now for receivers. He's got the most catches. He's got 150 more receiving yards than anybody else, and he's the first one to 10 touchdowns this season. So, I mean, he might be having an all-time great kind of year, and it just the rest of it is so. That's my most disappointing. Is just anyone not named those 3 guys, because they're just killing it right now. I mean, you've got Joe Burrow. You could argue he's having his best year.
He is having an MVP caliber season.
He said it himself.
It feels like there's like 5 quarterbacks that are having MVP caliber seasons, but he's one of them.
He's one. I mean, he's second behind Lamar in overall and passing grade. He's got the same number of touchdowns. It's at a certain point, I go, what else? I don't know that I've ever seen a quarterback having such a good season and
the rest of the team being this bad
and being under 500.
Yeah, that's a great question.
This goes back to like the Drew Brees days when they were 7-9 because they had no defense whatsoever, and Brees was throwing for 5,000 yards and going 7-9. I mean, this is where we're at with the Bengals. And look, again, if T. Higgins gets healthy, they're only 1 game behind Denver for a playoff spot. Huge game with the Chargers this week. I don't know that they match up real great with the Chargers right now, with the way the Chargers, at least want to run the ball, and they don't give up that many explosives. But the Bengals, in theory, if you were to win this game and maybe even the next game against Pittsburgh, you're right in it. You could be that last team in and be really dangerous, but it's hard to win with 3 or maybe 4 guys every week, and that's all you have.
There we go. All the games reviewed for you guys. We appreciate you watching and listening to the program. If you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can read all of the stats that we talked about here on this show if you go to pff.com or subscribe.pff.com and get yourself one of those PFF Plus subscriptions. It's not just the premium stats that you see every single week either. It's a lot of the NFL draft stuff, which we are going to get more into as the season goes on. It's the free agency tools. It's the fantasy football tools. If you are still in the running to win one in your league, go check it out and get yourself a PFF Plus subscription. For Dalton Wasserman, I am Trevor Sikkema. Thank you guys so much for watching this PFF Grades Release Show for Week 10. We will see you at the same time for Week 11 next week. See you guys then.